it's just safe to say at this point that Zonic was playing catch up to what other people felt like was the meta of CS2, and it's just obvious that he clearly just never figured it out.
Right, we're back for another episode of Snake and Banter. Our guest for this one is going to be LuzRaposa, who you might have seen. I like to do it like Marvel style, like Turn 2, Amazing Spider-Man, episode 12 or whatever. And then he was on Feed the Trolls. We did one there where basically, it's not a surprise to me, that's why I brought him on the show. People discovered, they thought they knew everything about stats, but there's other ways of doing stats. And guess what? I know this is going to blow your mind if you're a fan out there. But you know HLTV, that's just their model. They just chose their model with the things they prioritize in the game. And other people, B-Trams and others, can model the game differently. So Luz actually has his own, like, sort of, it's almost like a player efficiency type rating that he does, applies to people. He has his own way of deciding what people do, what roles, etc. So you'll see on this episode, he'll have his own angle. If you don't know, he is a quant for some sort of like, well, you don't need to know. All you need to know that's like in Dune, he's a mentat or some sort of like a stats wizard. Basically, he's straight firing the sheets. There you go. Excel, of course. And obviously, he also has, what's the name of the site? It's like CS Strats or something. No, sorry, wasn't it something like that? Am I thinking of the wrong person? Wait there a second.
Yeah, that's not mine. I do have a website, but it's just called LuzRaposa.com. And also I'm a writer for a site called Ready.
Oh, that's it. Yes. Okay, if people haven't seen Ready.gg, which as far as I can tell is some of the people who did the Read TLDR or something like that. Some of the people behind that site are also working with it, is it?
There's someone from that, yeah. A guy called Elliot is from that.
Don't you also do Read TLDR stuff as well?
No. I'm friends with
You were just
some
a
of those
guest or
people,
something?
Yeah, I'm just friends with someone.
Oh, right. Okay. I think I saw you on a video or something. Anyway, the point is, he is hooked into the scene. You'll find out there'll be some interesting angles on this. So, obviously, we always start with the spiciest topic. So we're going to skip straight to the bad section. And actually, Maui's going to go first. So, Maui, what spice do you have for us?
Yeah, my overall bad point is that it's just safe to say at this point that Zonic was playing catch up to what other people felt like was the meta of CS2, and it's just obvious that he clearly just never figured it out, because you look at the iterations of Falcons from the get-go and what Zonic thought was possible with those teams, because obviously, let's remind everybody, he was a part of all of the Falcons lineups there in CS2. I mean, when you look back at it, some of them are kind of just rebuilding rosters from CSGO, more or less, the way that he tried to kind of create some bastard child of Ents, I guess, with, Snappy and Sunpius and Modern and some of those guys, but then had pieces kind of mix and match with it. But then, as you see with his newest pivot, he moves so far away from that idea, which is that you just put a good CSGO roster on paper, and then it didn't work in CS2. Then he started the needle just completely swung in the other direction, and now he's showing an ineptitude when it comes to CS2, that he picked up a completely inexperienced, underqualified kyousuke to try to be the last missing piece for a Falcons team that really, if anything, just needed more stability as opposed to a player that has really high ceilings, but obviously has actually I would even say lowered the floor of Falcons in some ways. Because there was that, and I'll get into the idea of how he was behind it. Is that Zonic actually, I feel like he unironically listened to too many podcasts. I'm not even kidding. This is a serious take, because the take around the beginning of CS2 was, oh my God, look at what all these teams are doing. They're just stacking firepower. There's like, all you have to do, who cares about roles? Just put more firepower in the server. But that has clearly been proven to not be true. You look at what Vitality has done on the flip side, and to me, they're the most elegantly constructed roster ever, because everybody role for role is so perfect per position, and they all understand the priority that they have in a round over each other, but they also understand when they need to step up, when they need to fall back. They do a great job of only creating win conditions when called upon, as it in turn then means that the losing conditions are relatively shored up. Whereas Zonic has kind of just opened the floodgates for 3 guys that are going to create losing conditions at any given time. And I just feel like it's it's that Zonic in the beginning when he was playing with Dupree and Magisk and those guys was trying too hard to play 2018 Astralis CS:GO, where everybody stands back, feels the round out, a lot of holding of angles and everything like that. And then he pivoted so hard to the other side and it's just too far. He's just gone too far that everybody now on the team is just they're too addicted to peaking. And I feel like something that he didn't foresee in CS2, which has now become, to me, one of the building blocks on why Vitality is such an incredible team, is that at the beginning of CS2 also, mechanically speaking, people were saying that all you need to do is swing. But then the reality is that one of the reasons Vitality is so good as they are today, everybody now can hold angles really well. This was kind of also a big mechanical talking point at the beginning, that holding angles is really hard in CS2. CSGO was much easier at that. But if you watch a Vitality round break down now as how they play the game the best way possible, there's a lot of times they're just passively holding and waiting to basically punish over peaks from other teams. But that just didn't feel possible at the beginning of CS2, but now it is. And now Zonic is just with Falcons in the mud for reasons that he just jumped on these talking points on podcasts instead of actually trying to build a well-rounded team.
What do you think, Lars?
Yeah, I think one thing I haven't actually heard much spoken about yet regarding Falcons is that if you look at the role clashes between like kyousuke and NiKo, like they both, especially in past NiKo teams, NiKo always wants to be this space taker type. He wants to be, in the pack. He wants to be dictating some of these rounds. He almost wants to have his own voice. Like he's quite a vocal T side and CT side player, right? And if you look at Falcons pack right now, NiKo's actually pivoted back to like these kind of lurker roles, so that the pack can consist of Kixan, m0NESY, and kyousuke. And all three of these players are quite inexperienced, right? Like these are not players that have played like every event under the sun like NiKo has. They don't have his kind of experience. And so one thing that, like, you can obviously blame Zonic quite a lot for the way that he's constructed this team. I think that's very fair. But one thing that I think you should consider as well is how this isn't really the NiKo that was in like these G2 teams and like the FaZe teams before him. This NiKo is basically playing a completely different game to how he used to. And I do think that is why you see a lot of these Falcons rounds where they just kind of capitulate, especially as the clock like gets closer to the end of the round, because they just don't have that kind of experience in the map control pack where you need it.
I'll give you a counterpoint to that before I address Maui's. That's all Sonic's choice, and his point was about Zonic not getting CS2. So haven't you just explained how he took a bunch of inexperienced people? One's the fucking IGL, one's like a kid who's like came off a dick 7 seconds ago, and then he's going, oh, you'll be my entry. But the game's fucking T-side's very important in CS2. So I think actually that just adds to Maui's point inadvertently. I agree, it's an extra detail, because actually that's the thing. I agree with Maui. I'll focus first on the kyousuke part, then go backwards. I've said this at the time. I put him signing kyousuke as a good point, because it was clear, and it is true, by the way. I don't care what the numbers in the playoffs say. kyousuke is literally a prodigy at CS2, and it is going to inevitably be the case. Listen, tell you what, don't just naysay him now, guys. Tell me he'll never be good. Tell me he'll never be a top player, because first of all, you're literally wrong. He already did it at one event before. Secondly, if you ever see his numbers outside of the playoffs, he is an actual prodigy. He's not. It's like, the joke is, the reason Maui's hot take was that Mikaze is better than kyousuke is skill-wise, he just isn't. And it's actually apparent, and you can just see it with your eyes every time on the screen, unless you look at numbers, not the screen. So when he signed kyousuke, I didn't hate it, because to me that is some sort of like, I'm going to take a gamble on a Lamine Yamal type player, some stud player, where if I ever figure it out, I might just run the game. Like, I might actually have peak m0NESY. Again, look, I always thought NiKo was going to take a back seat. Someone was going to take the hit. Either they weren't going to give kyousuke spots, or they were going to not give NiKo spots. I agree. It's clear they've pushed NiKo to it, because NiKo also has been, like, subtly messaging, I'm going to become IGL soon, aren't I? Like, that's the next move for me. But let's see if this can work out first, because wouldn't it be cool to still frag out and win the major or whatever the fuck? Because let's be real, by the way, guys. If you've hated on NiKo the whole fucking time, then if he wins the major as IGL, you're not going to say it counted, because we mean NiKo, the star player, that's who has to win the major. So I get why he hasn't done it. But the problem is, if you then essentially say, I'm going to take NiKo, who I'm sorry, still can be really good. Even if you think he's 90% of peak NiKo, he's still the top 10 player in the world when he plays his roles. He can still impact a game, and he's mega. And he has experience, which obviously allows you to win rounds and win games. So if you're going to take that player out of his key roles, so you're going to make him weaker, essentially, you're going to make the team potentially weaker, and you're going to gamble it all on some kid, and that he's just going to basically be Essentially, the joke is, Maui's almost right. The gamble here is, it's okay, I have got another donk. But the joke I always say is, there shouldn't even be one donk. There was never a player that did this out the gate. Go and watch Zemo when he first joined Vitality. He had some ropey first tournaments. He had the odd playoff. He just bombed. By the way, at the majors, he used to just go missing even in big games. Like, that's Zemo, by the way. At the time, the best rookie we'd had. Simple was like up and down, and obviously had massive ego problems. So if you go and look at it, there is no donk. Like, you're not getting a donk, and no one even knew they had donk in spirit. They just hoped they did, and they got a crazy 1 in a million type. He's not only this good, he's also just good in the playoffs and no problems and has no issues and can just play his role, and we can build the whole team around. So if you essentially, let's be real, you have essentially built Falcons around kyousuke. And it just turns out he's so far choked the playoffs, and it just doesn't work as a squad anyway. Like, I agree, you don't have the right roles set up. So I'm sorry, that has to go on zonic. I'll even add this detail in. Normally, I'd even give him a small break because of the fact that, like, kyousuke is essentially played, like, not even a full year yet, guys. That's what I think people haven't even realised. He hasn't even had 1 full year in the game. He's still a rookie by even the, like, HLTV definition, except they probably do it by year because they do the award, don't they? But if we're talking about within a calendar year, he hasn't played a calendar year, but here's where I can't even give him that break clause. Because, bro, a guy I think is an amazing coach called Blade also picked up a player around that time who isn't a prodigy. He's called Makaze. Also only plied his trade in an academy squad. Looked like one of the better players there. And you know what? He took a little bit of time to get going too. He's now cooking back-to-back events. Looks like one of the better players in the world. Even is an aggressive entry type player, playmaker type guy, and is killing the game, and you can base your T-side around him. So the problem is, if you're Zonic, you can't go, well, who could do it? That guy, he did it. You know the guy, by the way, who's competing with you for the GOAT coach of CS. He's doing it, mate. And as a result, he's building his argument. He's the GOAT. And you're letting yours crumble because your shit's based on stuff from 3 years ago now. The joke is, if I don't want to hear Dupree tell me about how he was in Vitality, then I also don't want to hear Zonic because it was 3 years ago and a different fucking game. Now let's go to that part because I agree. If you do the contrast, look, Astralis is unbelievable. That is one of the best teams ever. I will say he didn't build it. He acquired that team from TSM. It was led by karrigan, and we all know he had a massive role in it. Then he became the coach. He swapped a player or two in and out. He got Glaive as the miracle. By the way, that was a gamble for everyone. They took the gamble on Glaive. Glaive is a really good tactical IGL. So since Zonic comes, if people don't know, his background 1.6 is pure tactical Counter-Strike. It was a team called MTW, and he used to play with the best of IGLs like Ave. So that's obviously his way he's learned CS, just like football coaches have their school of how they play and how they think about the game. And then, I'm sorry, it's very rare you're going to get a football coach. Like, it just happened to, if people want, I know Maui, these references go over your head, don't worry about it, mate. A lot of the audience will get this. Basically, actually, I'll give you one for free on the other side. Basically, in football, there was a really good manager tactically coming up from the German league. He's a Spanish guy called Xavi Alonso, who clearly is going to be one of the next shit-hot tactical managers. But he foolishly took the job at Real Madrid. That is the Falcons of football, if you don't know. So essentially, he took a job in a team full of superstars, and essentially the superstars got him fired, even though he was doing well in the game, because they were like, I don't like playing like this, you should just let me play essentially a loose style. And they did the equivalent of getting a Robban type person. That's what they're going to do. Now, the analogy for you would be, if you remember way back in the day when Mike D'Antoni invented that style of like 6 seconds or less, and then the joke was, if you remember, like 6 years later, so he had an up-tempo style where he had all these players that were running the floor and shooting threes. It's actually quite like basketball now. Then he went and took the job coaching the Lakers, where they were like a half-court team, and it didn't make any sense at all, because the logic is like, what are we doing here? Like, you don't have the pieces to run your system, and you're not going to change your whole philosophy on the game tomorrow and coach a different way, because in that case, what's the point in being you? Surely you're doing it because you think this is correct, this is how you should play the game. So even though, obviously, mad props for Astralis, it clearly was, though, he was aligned with the players, he had the right players, and then he was able to implement his style. I agree with Maui. Here's the problem. You can't just look at Vitality and go, yeah, but they won that major. Yeah, and what happened the year before that when he joined? He brought Dupree and Megis, still considered two of the better players. A lot of people don't remember. That was called a super team, and people said, Zero's got enough talent now to win the major. It was shit until we got Spinks, another star. Oh, that's familiar. You need another star, do you? And one of the reasons why is he couldn't actually play Astralis style CS. And I can tell you, they did try that style that first year, 2022. Then if you ever listen to people like Apex in interviews, when you're getting towards when they start getting successful, they win the major, he presents it. this is just to be polite, as if he had an epiphany one day from looking at Spinks and Ents and from thinking about international teams like karrigan's FaZe, that maybe in international teams you have to play a bit looser and a bit more tempo and take away some of the decision-making sort of difference between you and a really tactical national team. That's just a polite way of saying we were playing the wrong fucking style for our players. And the moment they changed to that style, they instantly became like really dangerous, won events and then won the major. And on the way out of that lineup, people forget when they cut Dupree, they were still making finals. They'd made 3 finals in a row. They made that blast right afterwards that they almost won. That was won by Heroic in like the last minute or whatever. Then they did the flames kick, etc. So if you take the vitality part, even if you credit Zonic with the end part, fair enough. That doesn't seem like that was his style. And by the way, he wasn't there for that long when they were doing that. That was like what, a 6-month period, 8-month period. I think he left the team like slightly into the second season. So maybe we'll see like a 9 to 10 month period at tops that he ever played that style and made it work. Then I agree with Maui. You come to Falcons 2024. Look, yes, it didn't have enough firepower. Obviously, that's an easy angle to see. But also, bro, it's not like every team had crazy firepower back then. I agree with Maui. There were teams that ruined their squad. VP's a great example. Liquid's a great example. These teams did just stack players like it was all CSGO and thought it would work. It didn't. But if you go and look back then, you still had teams back then that could operate with limited firepower and do things tactically in the server and look really good. His wasn't one of them. His was a team that just fell flat completely. They didn't look good tactically. They didn't even like outmaneuver the team. They just actually were worse in those regards and firepower. That's why that Falcons 2024 team is one of the most underwhelming teams ever. When you keep looking at the fucking names, you just go, this should be way better. And the joke is, it actually did literally cost people like mad in their career. You'll probably never see that guy ever again. He is in Hades territory. Enjoy it. Enjoy being in tier 2 and 3 for the rest of your life. You'll never get back into tier 1 because people think you're a bomb. The only reason Sun Pius did is because Saw reached down like Jesus to a leper and fucking healed him and pulled him up, arguably. And he's just done it to Nerds as well, by the way. So apparently Saw's just the redeemer at this point in time. Then the last thing to say is this. I also think this is why, if you look at the squad he has now, I actually do have to put a lot of blame on him because he chose to go into this aspect. And then lastly, there's one last detail I keep saying on shows, but no one else ever seems to address it or pick it up. What I still don't get is this. Maybe they've tried it in scrims, it didn't work. I'll allow for that possibility. But with what you see now, which just doesn't work, it doesn't work. What they do doesn't work in the game. It doesn't even look good. I don't understand. I'm not even on the train of you must change your player to get better than this. To get better than this, here's what you do tomorrow. The joke is you do it yesterday. You just put Tess back in the fucking hard entry role. Spoiler, I'm going to have a point soon about how Elise is just like twice as good now he's got Malbs, even though Malbs is worse than Nerds. Like, you just put Tess's in that spot tomorrow, and then you'll actually like play it. Look, if NiKo has to be a lurker, great, but the problem is it can't be NiKo and Tess's. Then we've got 2 players who were slightly inappropriate to be the lurker. And then lastly, I also think as well, in that team, I can't fully tell because I've never really seen an in-depth interview with him, but I just have had this feeling the whole time that like Kicksan just does his job, collects his salary, goes, yes, boss, I'll do whatever you say. And I think he wouldn't play this style if he had a different coach on different players, by the way. I imagine he would play. I always thought he was like playing a bit of like hybrid tactical and you play off your players, you know. Clearly he likes to frag himself, but people like Krabeni do it. So I don't think he wants to play this pure Falcon style. So as far as I can tell, I agree. Even though we all say NiKo choked and where was Morrissey at the major and Kyo, what about the playoffs, mate? Well, Twistzz, you just shit. Ultimately, the person who put them in all those positions, who guides them, who decides how they play and could change all these things tomorrow is fucking Zonic, and he ain't done it, mate. He ain't done it. Also, lastly, the last thing I also said about kyousuke, I think is a very valid point, is Zonic never in his career, by the way, was the guy who was bringing talents through and developing them. He actually, in fact, failed with the first talent he ever had, Kirby. He fucking withered on the vine initially until they got Glaive. Like, that player was having problems. And then lastly, even the time when he had the success in Vitality, he only had, like, one of the greatest entry fraggers of all time, just pure entry in fucking Debris. And then he also had Magus, who, if you remember, I thought played like a quiet masterclass at the end of that Vitality and was sort of like the ultimate fucking tactical lurker where he'd like pick people off and just add extra value here and there. Doesn't show us. So I agree. I actually think that's why even though the joke is fans were wrong when they just blamed him like day one of Falcons. Now at this point in time, for different reasons, it is Zonic seems like the biggest problem. Even though sadly it'll always be players that get blamed. It's just the way the game works.
I'll respond to the role stuff. I feel like it shouldn't be actually that much to ask of NiKo to just play the roles he's had in the past. Like, I mean, when he was lurking on mouse sports, he lurked on FaZe also. Like he was lurking. He was lurking Palace and B overpass at the Boston Major. Like these are all roles he's played to an exceedingly high level. He should be able to be able to do that again. I just think that my point about
by the way,
Zonic
do you think he wants to though? Because that's another angle, right? Like, by the way, you know when you said it was Zonic that got kyousuke, right? They all claim Monesi talked him into it or whatever. By the way, Monesi's not the coach, so that's about Zonic Sano. But actually, one thing we've never ever been able to find out, and I don't care about interviews, is I would like to know for real behind the scenes, did NiKo want that move? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't know he was going to lose his role. I don't know. I can't tell that.
Well, Eve, I'll just say this. I have a final point to wrap this whole topic up. Is just that even though this isn't really, it shouldn't even really be Zonic's doing, but I think that Zonic is going to get, everything that Zonic has done for the last 2 years does not in any way, shape, or form merit his position on the highest spending roster in all of Counter-Strike right now. There's no way that he should still be here after the successive failures that he has shown. That being said, what I think is going to happen is they're going to move NiKo to IGL over Kixan in the near future, and that's going to give him one more season, even though there's like no reason that he should even be here at this point. If you fail for 2 years, I get that your pedigree is the best. Like, it's literally the best pedigree we've ever seen of a coach in Counter-Strike. So it did merit this extra leeway that he bought himself, but I don't get how that's run out. How it's not run out. That's my big question. Sure. Because now it's going to be like, oh, Zonic gets to stay again because Kixan's out, and now NiKo's the in-game leader, and now Zonic has to teach NiKo how to become the in-game leader. I just think that it's completely unwarranted. It's just that at this point, he's like done such an incredible job, and like that's why I'll just put it like this. Like, I just think, okay, whatever. It's been long enough. Like, this is just what I've seen from the last 2 years of Zonic is a masterclass in paycheck stealing. It's an absolute masterclass. Like, I've never seen anybody be this good at giving more and more excuses, at buying himself more and more time, at getting the most absurdly large contract that any coach has ever seen in Counter-Strike. That's the point that it's gotten to for me, that I'm like, now it's a joke, the whole like paycheck stealing. At this point, I don't see any reason that it's anything but that. I would actually want people to prove the contrary. Sure. He's not paycheck stealing, as opposed to he is paycheck stealing. Sure. I think that's a harder argument to construct at this point.
By the way, I don't care, even though people get mad about this with Zonic, I don't care what people say in the interviews, right? Interviews aren't real. Like, if you actually believe, by the way, that any losing coach is going to explain in the interview why his team is losing, you are fucking mental, and you don't even understand the job of coach, or something called like fucking like what's got OPSEC, basically. Like, that would just give your opponents the key to defeating you, you idiots. Like, you never do that. That's why everything's euphemisms, you know. I do get that people wanting to accept responsibility. He has actually technically done a bunch of interviews where he says stuff like that, like, hey, maybe even I can get fired. Wow, we need to get it together. The point is, it's always just going to be vague shit, though. So I just care about what he does in the server and with the players. That's where I agree with Maui. He doesn't deserve the top salary in the game and the biggest stars. No. You going to say something, Luz?
Yeah, just to add to that, I do completely agree, by the way, that I also think Zonic is like solidly on fraud watch at this point. But I just kind of wanted to add in that detail because it's just one of those things that, you know, maybe I think goes overlooked a bit, that it's not just about there being a role clash. It's like the outcome of that role clash means that on their T sides, the people that are in the decision-making positions aren't the people with the most experience, right? Because like, and anyway, like one of the ways you can see that play out is actually, a lot of people know me as like the dual swing guy at this point, right? And if you plot all the different teams in Tier 1 at big events so far this year, and you do like their dual swing against their average tournament placements, right at the top, you see Falcons and Spirit and Vitality. They're like three that kind of stand out on their own. But the difference in winning when you factor in the firepower between Vitality and those Falcons and Spirit teams is massive. So if you want to say like, you have this much firepower, so you should be converting this much, you know, maybe it's round win percentage, maybe it's tournament placing, whatever. Like, they are just falling short massively.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing, Loz. Since you put out that thing today where it was dual swing residual versus overall duels, that sort of quote actually plays to what I was saying earlier about kyousuke. If he could ever actually play his normal game in the playoffs, he literally would be one of the best players in the world based on that stat, right?
Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, he's, again, like, CS2 lends itself to space takers quite a bit, but even then, it doesn't lend itself that well. Like, he's still way above where you should be for a player in his positions.
Yes. Okay. We will move on. So now we have your bad point. What is it?
Sure, yeah. So my bad point this actually comes because I saw an article yesterday, I believe, about xKacpersky signing like a long-term deal with NiP. So he's now like a permanent player for them. He's not just on loan anymore. And my bad point is that there are so many prospects that are locked in like tier 2 jail at this point. And xKacpersky is just one example of one of those players where I'm personally right now building like this roster move simulator tool. I just thought it would be a cool idea basically for our site, that you basically take like all of the economic resources, the T and CT spots of all the players on each map, like, you know, they're trading, lurking, all these things about how they play, right? And you take a player from one team, pick a player from another team, and it sort of shows you like how well would they fit in that player's roles, as well as like would they actually be an upgrade. And xKacpersky is one of those names where like everybody jumps on him to say he could replace maybe Immer on Na'Vi or Xerxin on Maus or like Jacob on FaZe. Like he's an eligible bachelor for so many teams. And now it's like all of those decisions, all of those options are just kind of dead in the water for the next however many years. And it's not just him either. Like there are so many players like this that I feel like if this were still CSGO, they would have been like snapped up onto one of these bigger teams in an instant. But for whatever reason, like whether it's player contracts being too expensive or whether it's the big teams are just kind of scared to make moves, it just doesn't happen the same way anymore. And so you see like Senzu going to Passion UA instead of FaZe. That's crazy. He could have been incredible on like a G2 or a FaZe. You see like Blame F is on Big right now. Same with like Grix or whatever, right? Like they could improve a Liquid massively, but no, they end up there. You've got like Nilo on Heroic. You've got like all the foot roster. Like I could keep going for ages, right? These are all players where, you know, whether you're sticking them into that tool that I've made or whether you're just using your eye test to like see that they would fit in these teams, they would obviously be upgrades, and yet they're just not happening anymore.
Yeah, it's this move is, I in some ways I get xKacpersky sticking with the fact that he came up on young ninjas, and I feel like when you have when somebody comes up through an academy system, it feels like they usually, I mean obviously kyousuke is an exception to this, but they usually pledge a little bit more loyalty than they do if it's instead them just getting picked from FaceIt or whatever it is. And so I would say good on NIP in one sense to actually secure a guy like this, because he is probably a top 3 under 20-year-old talent that's in the game right now. And also, this is almost just, for me, I think it should put more pressure on Snappy. I think it should put more pressure on the rest of NIP to pay this guy back, because for what I've seen in this Cairn iteration of the NIP roster, xKacpersky remains the sole shining light of this team that is actually winning them games, that's keeping them afloat, that's keeping them competitive. There's what was the map that he played recently? There was a map that he played on. I think it was at the Open, actually, at the Rotterdam event, where he dropped something like 30 kills, and it was the only reason they got it over the line. Oh no, it was EPL. It was EPL versus NRG, and him dropping 36 kills in a double overtime game was the only reason they beat NRG. Like that's just not okay. That's just not okay in any way, shape, or form when you should be convincingly winning over a North American team. No offense to NRG, I like that team a lot. Like I wish it was better, but like that NIP team shouldn't be having that much difficulty with them and needing an ascendant star performance to get it over the line there. I like the point in general, because it did feel like xKacpersky should have been the guy that improves a G2 or some of the rosters you already mentioned. I'd say I would have even gone as far to say something like Maus, get him to Maus for exertion, and that makes things really interesting for me. So it's kind of a shame, because you want to see the best players play on the best teams. I'd say the only saving grace about this is that they said permanent deal. I didn't see any listing for the total specified time that he's on the roster. So hopefully it's just a year, maybe 2, but Because by the time he's 21, I don't think he's going to be washed. So I think even if it's 2 years, I think he'll be fine.
The standard deal that every big org offers is 2 years, basically, because you do that so you have the option on the second year to just go, you're benched, fuck off, sell you. If someone you're really good, someone can't just wait 3 months at the end of this year and then go, lol, I'll take him for freezy, like Vitality did twice to FaZe, well, once to FaZe, but they could have done it twice if they wanted with Twistzz. So, and also, if you sign a deal like this, by the way, what really threw people off with this is, one, it was announced on April 1st, so people almost already literally were like, yeah, at Grok, is this real? By the way, they don't put the fucking post on hltv.org with all quotes if it's not real, you fucking idiot. It's not a joke website, is it? So already, that's not even a real question. Then secondly, because this is what's tricky, a lot of people didn't know he was on loan from Ents. So a lot of people saw the signing, and I'm not trolling you, people have become so dumb that because it said he signs a permanent deal, every fucking deal is permanent. But because he was on loan, he hadn't actually properly become a player of this team. If people don't know, remember when that Klim guy went over to MIBR, he was actually a G2 Ares Academy Squad player at the time on loan. That was also a loan deal. So by permanent, they just meant he's actually signed to NIP now. That's his team now. But I think people actually took the word permanent, and this is why they thought it was an April Fool's, as like, xKacpersky is soul bound forever to NIP because there was all people like his whole career is over. It's like he's only going to be there 2 years. Like as Maui said, he's not like 28 and this is the end of his prime. Like this is actually totally fine. It's even, by the way, a squad where, if anything, I'll even give you a counterpoint as to why it's not that negative. He's only just got the chance to play a bunch of the tier 1 lands and he's finally performing. If people remember the major, that was a perfect example of how people climbed the ladder of competitive CS. In stage 1, he was killing it. In stage 2, he was right on the fence. He was having some up and down games. If he'd have gotten to stage 3, which Nip could have, they had all those super close overtime games that they lost, if you remember, I think he would have probably struggled. I think when he'd have been thrown in the mix with the Navis and the Falcons, I think he'd have had some bad games because he was still getting acclimatized to it. Now, he essentially gets what I wish people like kyousuke, and if Donk had failed, Donk would have had, etc., which is, I want you to be able to have a chance to like go into the team that only plays group stages. Like Foot isn't doing now, by the way. No one flames Foot if they don't make the playoffs. We all just enjoy what they do, and we all know they didn't do it that first time out because Mouse gave them a favour, but we all know they'll probably fail a big playoff series at some point in time. A few of them will all go, oh, what's going on? But there's no pressure, there's no crazy expectations. This guy's been allowed to blossom and develop. He hasn't been given the kyousuke Donk treatment, like they go straight to the front of the line, be the best player in the world or you shit, which is crazy pressure to put on people. Like, by the way, mad props to people like Makaze for coming through that time period, because it wasn't just Kassad with the hot takes. A lot of people in that second season were like, Navi isn't it, this isn't it, Blade, what are you doing? Kick. And by the way, he was one of the ones they wanted kicked because that would allow them to keep him as the most fool's gold empty calories fucking stats player of all time, but not a bad player on fucking Mirage, I'll give him that, and an above average player. So anyway, I do think, by the way, for him, it'll just allow him to just shine. He'll just look awesome. He looks, by the way, you've got to give props to Snap. He just built the team around him. He looks great. This guy's a great, like, aggressive player. If you don't know, by the way, yes, he's played some of the tier 2 LANs. Those even have real teams in now, by the way. For this year on LAN, he just is averaging a 1.3 T-side rating. That's fucking inhuman. Now, yes, he's not Donk. He's not playing tier 1 teams all the time. That's still very, very good, though. And you just look, he's just a great player. Eye test-wise, he's always checked out. He's got a high skill level. Also seems, by the way, like a player without big ego, just grinds the game, does what you want him to do. Also, as Maui said, if you played in the academy squad, I'll go one further. I feel like you do have allegiance to the team because they helped make you someone in the first place. They helped work with you. And also, since you've been in the academy squad and now you've been in the team as well, there's an underrated detail people don't understand. We've got to stop pretending like it's not a business sport as well, that it's just only what happens in the server. Does no one else get mad when you hear these conversations like, imagine if Donk joined PARIVISION? Why the fuck would he, you cretin? That would be like saying that if Man United's having problems now, maybe one of their stars should just go and join like fucking, like, pick up, I don't know, fucking Leicester or something like that, you know, because you think Leicester has a good system or something. It's a smaller club with no money and he's never going to have stars around him. Like, it's not going to happen. So one of the reasons why NIP, even on a lesser degree Fnatic, will get chance after chance with talents you don't think they should have, is because when you go in NIP, they fly you out to Sweden, you go and see their facilities, you go, fucking hell, this is esports, mate, look at this. You go in, Threats there, one of the legendary like players from fucking Swedish Counter-Strike, exists as your coach. Like, bro, what do you want? Like, if you're a young player who's yet to experience the best teams and the heights of the game, that feels like you've made it. It feels like you're playing in the NBA or the Premier League or something. You think, I'm here now. Then when they come to you and you're just some Polish teenager and go, you know what, mate, here's a shit hot salary. By the way, we still have money. We're even bragging all the time. We've mined Bitcoin and make millions of dollars of it. Here's a big fucking salary. You're just some little Polish kid who, by the way, if you went to work at a real life job, would be making a pittance. And you're probably being paid. I'm going to go ahead and guess he's in like the 20x type, the 20k type fucking salary range now for the next 2 years. Mate, my mum and dad are doing backflips when I tell them that. That sounds awesome. And it is an IP. The last thing I'll say is this. People who think an IP is shit, you know what? If you go only off W's, they are. Inarguably, they are shit. But I'll tell you what, if you want to know, all losses aren't the same. There are losses where you just have no, like FaZe now, you have no chance to win the game. You don't even look good in the game. You never had any. Nip loses games where it's like, it's the ultimate cope team because you can always argue them away. There's always, like, for example, the Ken guy probably needs like 3 more months before he really activates. I've heard he's straight fire, by the way, without pressure. You've obviously got Wrinkle is the ultimate fucking fool's gold AWPer, isn't he? He either looks like 80% simple or he looks like fucking currents and pious. You pick which one it is. I was even polite to ultimate. You don't even get to be in that comparison anymore, mate. I don't know, you're at tier 1. So yeah, I think it's a great signing for Nip. The problem is, I agree with you guys. If you want to be cynical, he should be in those other teams. With that said though, I'll just put this out there. And this is something, if people want to investigate it and ask people questions, go and do it, boys. Did any of these other teams ever even inquire about his status? Apparently he wasn't signed properly to NIP. So did the following teams at any time in the last 6 months, or even in the last 3 months, did FaZe come and say, is this player available? Can we sign him instead of Jacob or after Jacob? What about G2? Did they come before they got nerds and go, this could be a player that could play with Intelligent Malbs and maybe he could have a great duo? Did Team Liquid even consider this move? By the way, I'll give you a bigger one if you want to get ballsy. Would someone like Mouse have even considered this move? These are all the teams. Like, that's one of the problems. Every one of these teams can't be broke, guys. Every one of these teams can't be in a position where they can't sign fucking players. Some of them are signing players. And I totally agree with the Passion UA one. Passion UA is balls on your fucking chin to FaZe Clan. They signed both the players you should have gambled on who look like they're cheap as fuck because they're Passion UA. Again, that wouldn't even, my analogy, that wouldn't even be a Premier League team. That would be like a mid-table fucking a championship team signs like a player that should be on Manchester United in this analogy. So I think it's an awesome look. Great for xKacpersky in the short term. In the long term, Snappy better get his shit together. I don't even look at Wrinkle anymore. He's up and down, but opposite. It's Ken better get his shit together. If those two do, it'll be okay in the second season. They'll actually be like the 12th best team, and it'll be all good. But obviously, yes, it'll be a bomber if we get to the end of the year. He's essentially like Elijah on call, and he's just fragging out with crazy numbers. But then he's locked away, and he can't join any top tier. And then who knows what happens the year after that? I'm with you. I agree. It's bad in that sense.
I think, I agree fully that it's good for these teams, and maybe even good for these players. They're getting time to develop. The reason I think it has to be bad, though, is because Vitality are just going to keep stomping unless one of these big teams makes a move. And you think about who's available that they could reasonably get, and it's all these players that are stuck in tier 2. Like, it's not just xKacpersky, it's just he was the most obvious example, right? And he's fresh on the mind. But, like, if they don't make a move, like if Maus don't make a move for Xertion, or if Na'Vi don't make a move for like Emma or something, like I just don't think they're ever going to be in with a chance of beating Vitality. And I think that's just bad for the scene.
Sure. Now, speaking of FaZe, our friends over at Polymarket have an interesting one, I thought, which is, if you go to the props section, you will find one that they did a while ago. It was this one here. It was, will karrigan retire by June 30th, so after the major? And it's only actually an 18% chance. At one point, it spiked up to like yes, basically, early on, back in February. Now it's actually only at 18%. It hasn't spiked because of this recent news, basically. And one thing I find interesting about this is, I'll just go first on this, which is, I would have said before, no fucking chance karrigan is going to retire. What are you talking about? He wants to win another major. I can tell you, the saddest part about FaZe, I'll get to this later, is I can tell you they are not sitting on their hands doing nothing, losing, going, oh, boys. They're trying so hard. But if everyone knows this story we told on By the Numbers many years ago, when Richard actually got to go to NRG's house, when NRG was Gobby and Tabson and Legia, and then 2 NA players, and he used to sit and watch Gob B hard grind CSDM after the scrims, hard as fuck for hour after hour after hour, and then he'd go in the official games and do like, you know, a fucking 0.6 rating, and it just showed like hard work just ain't it, mate. You have to also have the like talent level and ability. So I can tell you, karrigan really doesn't want to retire. He wants to probably play at least this year. I think the whole reason of bringing Twistzz back was the idea you reignite the old ban, Brokey gets his shit back together. So I would prefer have said no chance. I would have said this is actually accurate. In fact, I'm even amazed at 80%. I've got to say right now, if they really do fail to make the major, I think suddenly this goes from 18 to like, I think it's going to fly up. I think it's going to be like 50 or 60 or I think a lot of people expect like he will retire because I'm assuming this is retire from play, obviously. Yeah, it says as a player. He can be a coach, all that bullshit, even though, by the way, I'll just put this out there. Just because Blade can do it and have mad impact, I don't think people realise what you want from karrigan half the time is mid-rounds, you won't get that as a coach. That's the way, it's not 2015. That's the weirdest thing about all the people saying he should just go coach who are like his fans. I'm like, bro, you're away. You just tell him to like reduce his impact on the game and you won't have karrigan anymore. So I want to know where you guys are at. Do you think he does retire? Do you have another reason why he doesn't? Where are you at, Loz?
Yeah, I mean, I desperately don't want him to retire personally, but it is one of those things where you think about the kind of player karrigan is and like the kind of things that fuel him and motivate him. He's coming towards the end of his career, like even if we would rather him play for another 20, right? And at this point in someone's career, you don't care about just making a deep run anymore. Like it doesn't give you the energy you need to keep going. You need trophies. You need to be in with a chance of doing something and adding to your trophy cabinet, but before you sort of hang up the mouse and keyboard. And I think, unfortunately, like we saw like the biggest dead cat bounce ever with the last major, where that was like the biggest fool's gold run ever. Like I don't think that was replicable under any circumstances, at least not with these players. And so for me, I think it's one of those where unless karrigan either goes to another team or ends up getting the firepower upgrades that he needs, which, as we mentioned earlier, like it's not looking likely, then I don't know. I think I have got to agree with them on this and say 20%. Yeah, that's fair, honestly.
I don't want it to happen either, but I would say karrigan has become detrimental to FaZe's chances of winning. Not quite as much as Brokey and Jacob, but it's pretty close. There does become a point where I'm not really seeing anything that's compelling me via the calls, and especially not his individual play. So then you can, and sometimes you can only do as much as you can with the pieces that you have, but he's got a couple of great pieces. And for Twistzz also to be having essentially a career worst year thus far is pretty damning for me. So I never thought I would turn on karrigan, but I think I'm in the season where it might be happening.
But it's way, Maui, I don't turn on him. I still think he could be a great IGL. I think if he walked in a Mouse or Falcons tomorrow, he could win any tournament he wanted.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Mouse is a good one for him.
This is the way I would explain it. I agree with you, though, that he is detrimental to FaZe. Here's why. You notice I've stopped doing that thing I did before, where I was like, hey, FaZe has still got 3 world-class players. Not currently, though. Like, in theory, they have 2 with Frozen and Twistzz. Those, in theory, could even play in this team and be world-class, as you saw earlier on. The problem becomes, I've just seen it happen too many times in every single karrigan team ever, which is when stars drop off, suddenly he's calling shit. It's not. It's because his calling is based around having good players who are playing well and sort of have their agency of their own. His fragging has been shit, unironically, at a very similar level for like half a decade at this point in time. It's nuts. Yeah, maybe it'll be slightly worse, even more so when everyone else collapses in the team, because think it through. Then he's just running into a site with no utility, with no follow-up, or he's just like, if you ever see him, put it this way, here's where you know individually he's completely cooked. If you ever see him alive in a 2vx, your heart sinks, you just go next. You know what I mean? Whereas the joke of vitality is, there's never a go next. I'll take any of those 2 players in a 2vx. Everyone's ready for it. Even Mouse or something like that, you think it's possible. You don't with FaZe, which is a key component compared to other teams. Yeah, I'd put it this way, I'm with you. That's why
Are we doing a point on karrigan or FaZe?
I've got a point later, so you can...
Okay, I'll save more of my my stuff on this. Yeah, right. I have some stuff I wrote down.
We will go now to my bad point. And I think this one is actually a really obvious one. But the joke is, here's what's whack about how many teams are failing in CS, especially big teams. It means you never fucking notice. And every one of them doesn't get to be headline news. Because over and over again, you have someone like, the joke is, like last season, by the way, people missed that like Na'Vi had some dodgy results, but no one noticed because other teams are shit in the bed. So instead, you look now, and in the same way as Mouse gets to live for another day because Liquid fails so hard and FaZe fails so hard. I'll tell you, the team that should literally be kissing the feet of FaZe Clan is fucking Aurora. What are you doing? So if people don't know, they already have the major. They're already in like a good spot. Presumably they were just playing to, I don't know, guarantee stage 3 or something and like pump the spot. But they've chosen, remember, this is the team communicating to you publicly when they bitch out and write a fucking sob story after every elimination, as opposed to just going, hey, I'm actually a man and I lost. Okay, I own it. Next time I'll try harder and I'll fix my mistake. No, oh, sorry guys. I don't know, you deserve more and we're going to try. And you know what? It's not our fault yet. We have to travel so much. Why are you going to Draculan in Romania then, mate? You're already, in theory, a team that should, by your logic, skip the odd PGL. Why are you going when you've already got the major? Everyone else, by the way, if you don't know what's happening with FaZe now, they're basically even saying, fuck PGL, and we'll even in the future lose VRS points just to gamble on getting to the major, because the major's everything. So if you already got the major, why would you ever gamble on this? Then lastly, we're all supposed to go. It's okay that Xantares choked his tits off in all those other finals where he didn't have hand problems, but now he has hand problems just because he has hand problems, bro. I don't get it, because you know what? Those hand problems seem awesome in the fucking group stages, but no. In the finals, I guess, fucking the pressure demons just massage his muscles all fucked up, and he can't. Stop going to lands! The number one thing any doctor tells you whenever you go, I have a wrist injuries, they go, they don't play the game a lot, my son. And then you just go, I have to. Yeah, you have to at tier 1. You don't have to go to this tournament. And so if people don't know, they went to this tournament, listen who they lost to. M80. No, for real, M80. And then they lost to Alliance, who, at least I'll give them this, has an upcoming potential star in Halo 9. They already, as a core, last year online were pretty good. But if you don't know, just to make an emphasis, this isn't a great thing. I saw people raving about this. They have Twistzz on their team. Not Twistzz. They have Twistzz, the player who was a viable prospect 10 years ago. His career ended in CS about 5 years ago, by the way. Him winning isn't some like, oh, the old dog's still got it. It's what the fuck is going on with Aurora. Because, bro, this has to be bad. Like, what? There's no way. There's no positive to spin out of this. You've just gone, as far as I can see, fucked yourself for VRS. By the way, you wouldn't even be the teams that gain very much because you're so high up in the rankings. Remember, it's like Elo. You know how everyone bitches like a moron when they're a pro? Like, I play matchmaking and I lose all these points, but then I only gain fuck all when I win. You're at the top of the ladder, dickhead. Do you know how an Elo system works? The whole point is you don't have much to gain from winning a match because you're at the top already. It's a relative system. When you're playing a bomb and he beats you, yeah, guess what? You lose fucking tons of points. So just like people don't understand, as far as I can tell, I'll summarise it. Aurora doesn't understand the concept of an Elo system. They're just like, I'll take on any comer. And so you've just bled away points for no reason, made a fool out of yourself. And I genuinely don't know what the upset. Even if you'd have won this, I'd have still gone, but why? The Ryan Reynolds meme. Shout out to that old gif on the internet. Right, okay, Loz, what do you think of this Aurora topic?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak too much to why they decided to play this event because I genuinely have no idea. I don't know if even they do. Like, maybe they want to stay in form ahead of tournaments coming up.
Okay.
Like, who knows, right?
I play scrims, you know. You don't lose VRS points when you lose those.
But like one of the things I've noticed about Aurora recently is that like I like judging players based on not just their like raw performance, but how they compare to other players in their roles.
Oh, that's just
and the player for me that stands out.
Go on.
True, yeah. The player that stands out to me is like xKacpersky has fallen off really hard. Actually, xKacpersky is actually really disappointing me recently, and like Xantares is not quite the same elite player as he once was. He's still great. He's still like great firepower. But you just don't get the same output from xKacpersky that you used to. And when you combine that with all the flaws that Aurora have had for the past, 3 years, because it's always been the same, right? They've always had these cooling issues. They've always had these sort of structural issues. And they've sort of gotten by on those two players just being fantastic. And then maybe, cycling through the odd new talent that can, have a honeymoon phase for them for 3 months and then try the next one, you know? So, yeah, I don't know what Aurora do at this point. I don't think they do either. But, yeah, I think it's a good point.
If I had to just assume, I didn't read this anywhere from their perspective, but I assume they just wanted to secure stage 3.
It'll be something like that, yeah.
Dude, that's just greed. That's just pure greed.
It's like that meme all the kids love. This is that greed they talked about in the Bible or whatever the fuck all the kids love. This meme,
this is actually exactly what they wrote about in the Bible. There's no real other reason for wanting to be in stage 1 over stage 3 other than stage 2. I know that somebody's gonna come into the comments and say that the difference in money is like $200,000 or something like that, and I guess that does go a long way in a place like Turkey, I assume, but that's still just greed. I mean, that doesn't change the fact that it is at the end of the day greed.
Yes.
So I'm not. Especially when a player's hand is injured, and like that was the complaint of last year. I think you already hit the nail on the head that this is just kind of a gratuitous tournament sign up. It's almost just you're shooting yourself in the foot. This is the meme of the guy on the bicycle and putting the stick in his own tires of his own spokes, saying like, the burnout. It's like you're the one that's creating more burnout. Like, you don't have to go to any of these or all of these. It doesn't matter. Like if you're a good enough team and you just go up to look at what Vitality did. You know, they didn't go to EPL. They're not going to these absolutely shit lands. Like, you know, it's whatever. Like, just stop. Just stop. Like, you don't need the stage 3 invite. You could live with the stage 2 invite, or I mean, also maybe believe in yourself that you're going to play well enough that you're going to get the stage 3 invite. Like, that's another facet here, and it's also just live with the fact that, I mean, I almost just see it from this perspective for myself. Could I email ESL every waking day of my life and say, please hire me, like, please, I need to work every single event on the calendar? It's like, at this point, for whatever reason, you know, me not working with them is fine. Like, at this point, I'm okay with it, because at the same time, like, I was away from home nearly 200 days last year. Do I really want to work any more days? Like, that's just not, like, I know my limit as a human. I hope I'm not complaining. I literally I don't complain publicly about the amount of events I have in a year for talent work, because I also manage it. Like, I'm not taking all the gigs for tier 2 lands. I'm not taking all the gigs for like, you know, I have turned down stuff before because I'm like, that's just, my calendar's just too busy. Like, it's like, that's just, I don't need more money. Like, there's diminishing returns on it, guys. Like people, you know, there's studies about, like, if you make over whatever it is in America, like 85,000 a year, your returns on happiness are diminishing. Like, that's just what Aurora's doing. They're not realizing that there are indeed diminishing returns here.
I'll also just say as well, like, another angle I think people have missed on this is actually going to be the example that makes no other team ever make this mistake again. Because here's the mistake that you've made here, is you've thought, well, because teams can use those lands and farm them to get into the major, why don't I just improve my standing in the major? And it's like, no. You've missed it, mate. Once you're in the major, you'll just win those matches and get through the stages. It's not a problem. If you're good enough, it's going to happen. Actually, you are risking way more by going to this land. As, by the way, G2 proved that too. You're going to see, I don't think people know this. I don't mean it in the negative way that all the dickheads online do, who back in 2023, after that Blast Pirates major, quite literally would have kicked karrigan, replaced him with Shuhei, would have kicked like Apex and replaced, you know what I mean? They'd kick like 1 million people and put like all those people who just broke through on Apex and fucking into the air, what the fuck were they called? Into the Breach and Graham Legion. They were like, they must all be, they beat the top team, just like Bad News Eagles. No, what you learn is it's Bad News Eagles. Those lands are full of Bad News Eagles. Those teams themselves, by the way, won't then go on to be awesome at the major if they make it there. But if you go to their world, if you go down to their level, the joke is they'll beat you with experience. Like, they play in the fucking mud, boys. It's shit where they play. They play nightmare online games. That's why, yes, that guy will tool you up. He plays a match every day, mate, against fucking Russians that might or might not be cheating in the game. So if you go there, here's my take. Here's a hot take for you. I could have saved it for the show, but we're not doing it this week. Any team outside of, at the moment, Vitality, who goes to one of these lands would genuinely be at risk of losing at least a game. Because remember, or maybe Na'Vi wouldn't. I'd say maybe Na'Vi's the other one I'll put in the mix. After that, who are the other top teams, guys? Falcons? Are you fucking kidding me? They could fuck up one of these games. PARIVISION could definitely lose a... By the way, if PARIVISION went to one of these, they would lose a gang of games. I'm telling you right now. Like, they wouldn't... Remember, that style wouldn't work against those teams. They're not playing real CS that you can do all the fucking movements. There'd be no... The joke is Jim would do the most genius stack, and then they would the other team wasn't even reading the game of the fake anyway. They'd just fucking go to the other site because they're just playing Randy, and the two people would just push both sites and go, oh, this one's empty, come over here, lads. So I think loads of top teams could get their ass handed to them, like Liquid, G2, FaZe, all these squads are, right? Aurora, like... Think about that, guys. We all laughed when it was Liquid last year and they went to the small Birch Cup and they didn't win it, etc. We all laughed in the face of Flyquest and then when they lost to fucking basement Boys or whatever the fuck it was called at Draculan. The problem now is this. How can we laugh anymore when it's Aurora, when it's G2? Like, we know these teams have a baseline of either skill or structure that we all thought meant it was impossible to lose to these teams. But you have to understand, this is like no man's land, bro. Some of these people, here's the maddest analogy ever, but I don't give a fuck. Some of these people were like the French army going into World War I, where they had their empire and they were coming in on horses and they were this regal, epic army that was going to be awesome. And you know what they found out? Pretty sick when the other guy has machine guns and you're wearing blue uniforms and everyone can just see you and you get your fucking ass handed to you because it's a different type of warfare. You don't want to be at Draculan unless you have to be there. So the idea you willingly signed up, and then look, I won't even do this, guys. I'll be really careful how I say this because I've learned my lesson. You have to just do it in the person's mind. Does anyone know where the country Draculan is contained within? And I'll just say is this, do you know the lore of the character of Dracula himself? Do you actually know who he was fighting and what he did to them? That's all I'm going to say is, listen, the synchronicity is crazy, bro. It is crazy. Anyway, that's straight fire if you know what I'm referring to right there. They did that. History did that. The Matrix did that, not me. I'm just Morpheus. I just free you from the Matrix. I'll do. Anyway, now we will go to a completely different section. Because now we will go, let's get all that negativity out of the way. That was the section, if you haven't noticed, where apparently Maui was joining in on it. Every take I have is just like, so you think this, you idiot, what are you doing? Because I've just mastered, that's my comedic voice of man now, isn't it? It's like when George gets mad in Seinfeld, you're just like, it's look at him, he's all mad and flustered. It's like, oh, look, all the kids are like, look, the old man's getting pressed over an opinion. Oh, he's getting pressed again, isn't he? No, it's called passion, you arsehole. What are you talking about? It's just joie de vie, but in a dark way. There you go. So let's go to the good. Let's talk about good things. Lars, what's good right now? What's enjoyable in CS? What do you like?
Yeah, so my good point overwhelmingly actually has to be flames on Vitality, or flameZ if you enjoy saying it wrong. And the reason is
he told me he wants it like that, and it's just it does not roll off the tongue.
It doesn't at all.
Yeah, I know. But the reason it has to be flames, there are two parts to this. The first is, again, I'm a major role cell, or whatever that term is.
Of course, all the best people are.
And flames isn't in the kinds of star roles that like his fellow like aggressive riflers are. He doesn't get Donk's resources. He doesn't get like even Xantares' resources. He's actually on the CT side. Vitality have quite a weird setup where Apex is one of the few IGLs that still does this. He takes the star rotator positions for himself. He'll play like the Conan Mirage or whatever. There's only 3 IGLs in like tier sort of 1 that still do this, and it's him, it's Blitz, and it's Hunter. So it's quite an unusual setup, and it means that one of your riflers that would normally be in those spots has to be like an anchor player. And for Vitality, that is flames. And so when you actually look at his performance relative to the roles that he's playing, he's probably the best player in the world. If you just look at like raw firepower, again, dual swing, I posted that graph earlier today. I think he's just incredible in that regard. And the second point to this is, in Rotterdam, we actually got a chance to speak with him. And we asked him about like what he's actually done to make the difference between 2025 and 2026. And what he said was that he started doing 2 things. The first is he's now watching his own demos back a lot more. Like he's trying to watch his own footage. And the other thing is he's doing a lot more specialized training. He's doing refrag and that kind of thing. And the reason why I think you put those 2 things together and it's great is because if I'm coaching a player, like if I'm telling them what I would want them to do in order to improve, I'm telling them you need to do solitary dedicated training. If you look at like things like chess or any sort of thing that's quite heavy on cognition where there's like a skill level involved, that's the single biggest predictor of what your skill level will be. It's not like raw matches played. It's dedicated solitary time spent thinking about the game and like doing puzzles and this kind of thing. So not only is he having this massive uptick of form where he's a genuine top 5 player in the world in any like firepower metric you want to pick, but he's also kind of doing it the right way. And he's doing it in a way that other players can kind of copy.
It's actually I made a YouTube video actually probably a long time ago in like 2019 when I was competing at the ECL level about how people should structure their time, because I mean, you know, I don't usually flex into this obviously because it's not like I played at the tier 1 like highest level or anything like that, but I got to play ECL when I had like 3,000 hours in the game. It's CS2 because I had played competitive Counter-Strike when I was younger. I learned lessons from that. Then when I came back to Counter-Strike 5 years later, when I was, in my opinion, a grown adult as like a 23-year-old or 22-year-old, then I was like, okay, let me just do this as efficiently as possible. And I would say for everybody, I would still say the first 1,000 to 2,000 hours, you should do a lot of mechanics training. But after that, it's again, back to diminishing returns. You're definitely going to face that in these moments. Like, you're probably not going to be Donk, where by jamming 10 face-it pugs, you will actually get better. Like, Donk is he's kind of a cheat code where he's almost like linearly improved as an individual by spamming pugs in a way that nobody else can replicate, because there are there's tens of thousands of people on Faceit who have above 2,000 Faceit games, and they're barely scraping by at level 10 or level 9. Like, those are the people that could definitely learn from that. And I also think that it's a cool point that you bring up there, Luz, that it's just that flameZ has his mechanics were already absurd. I mean, last year he had, was it 2024 or 2025? He had one of those entry highlights where he went out Mirage on A, and he just like ran through the whole bomb site and practically just tapped every single person out, and it was sublime. But you're not pulling that off every single round because they're shooting you back. It's about your decisions and everything. And so, speaking to flameZ myself, and hearing what you're saying about the approach that he's brought to this year is something that we probably need more of in CS. Another example on the flip side is that, as opposed to someone like ZywOo, for example, who just kind of seems to possess a radar hack in his brain, you're also not, and the thing that is always been so impressive about ZywOo lately, his mechanics have shown up for sure. Like, don't get me wrong, he's still an elite mechanical player, but it was actually surprisingly not his mechanics that was his best attribute. His best attribute was his prescience, his mental mapping of the game as he's playing it. And unless you have, like, on the Donk side or the ZywOo side, you're probably not gifted with either of those, but you can have an efficient routine for yourself when approaching Counter-Strike, which is develop your mechanics until you feel like you're a level 10 average person. Like, if you're like a 2.5k average person via mechanics alone, well, now it's absolutely time to start thinking about your macro decision making, because your return on investment is going to be so much greater at that point than just spending another hour in DM, another hour. And the problem is obviously because people get to that point, they get to that level 10, they get to that tier 2, tier 1.5 level by spamming mechanics training. They think that it'll carry them all the way to being tier 1, but the answer is, like, you do need it's actually, this has been proven untrue with muscles, but it's like, you're supposed to shock your muscles. That was the old saying in, like, the Arnold Schwarzenegger bodybuilding era, is that you got to shock your muscles, and you have to do different activities or whatever. You got to do different workouts almost so that you can then, like, kind of round yourself out. What they were saying there was wrong. Like, you should just keep working bench press. But what is true is that if you want to have a more overall aesthetic physique, you should improve your shoulders, you should improve your lats, you should improve your traps, you should improve, like, you got to improve all these other aspects, and then you have the best instead of spamming bench press for 5 days a week.
I'll use the analogy you're giving here, right? The obvious angle, like you said there, is what most pro players do, and I love that this topic came up, because what's hilarious is when he says those things out loud, I just want to say, it's not a surprise to me at all, I just want to say to fans, what have I been telling you for like 10 years at this point in time? People, I've told this story before, when Fnatic was the #1 team in the world in 2015, and Olofmeister was the best player in the world, I went to players like that in person and asked them, do you do any specialized individual training? Like, do you watch the demo to see the CT's positions and how he sets up, for example? Do you ever go and, like, watch your own demo back and see, like, did you make little mistakes? And they essentially told me, like, why the fuck would I do that? I just play the game and I'm good, like, I'm better than them. And that was the thinking, not only back then, it's until quite recently. That's why in the modern day, it looks like that's not a problem, because you hear that coaches and IGLs make people watch demos. They're not watching individually, guys. They're watching for things like a key error that the team made, and they're watching for things like the tendencies of the overall squad, or one player, say, playing Donk, how are we going to neutralize Donk? Donk. The reason this is crazy as a topic is because holy shit, it is insane that people can get to the level of vitality last year where you're the best team in the world, maybe of all time, and you still haven't rounded your game out. Because I'm with you, the analogy of the gym is a good one. Most pro players, basically, I think people like Xantaras have been doing this their whole career. They're going to the gym, and you know what? They love that fucking bench, bro. They're doing the bench press, they're doing the deadlift, they're doing the fucking incline dumbbells. But here's the problem, Maui. It stings a bit when I do the leg press, though. So they don't ever work their legs. They don't. I usually say they don't work the connecting muscles as well. So they also have it where like they have absurd strength in one muscle, but maybe even a muscle that's also required to support that is strained as a result. They never work on the shoulders, then work on their neck or their back or something. They never get their core strength there. Or even if they do it all, the another analogy would be maybe you do with a full 4 days a week, but you never do any cardio. So even if you got into a situation where you need to use your strength, you'd have limited ability to access it. That's what pro players are like. And the reason this is bonkers is, let me just give a very quick sports analogy. One of the craziest things of all time is the reason, if I'd have asked, not specifically Olaf, I give that example because he was the best player in the world. If I'd have asked the top player back in the day, and by the way, people like Simple were extremely rare that they worked on this. I personally will speculate NiKo did, because I saw him turn from a very different type of selfish superstar entry playmaker to one who could like utility, he could play back, he could sort of like half mid-round call the game in G2. I thought he did amazing shit in that squad, his transformation. The reason why it's actually sad that most of these pros don't ever make the attempt is they would tell you, but I don't need to do that. I already know that way. No, that's not what pro players get to say in sports, guys. If you go to the NFL, do you think the best wide receiver goes, look, I'm really fast and I'm really good, so I don't look at my routes and I don't look how the opponent defending play, I don't look how the quarterback plays? What are you talking about? Literally the best players in the world, if you don't know, literally the ones who have all those OP weapons, they're really unstoppable because they go in the film every single time. The story in the modern day, because they have the tech, is they all get on the plane after the game they've just played and they have like a tablet that gets loaded up by their sporting staff with like their routes, the opponent's routes, and it's either from that game to learn from it or it's for the next one that's coming up in 4 days or something like that. So that's the thing. Again, I've always given this analogy, right? By the logic of how fans think of qualities as static, like they're a Pokemon card, they would think Steph Curry doesn't need to practice three-pointers. He's the greatest shooter of all time. I guarantee he practices today more three-pointers than any player to ever live, including, by the way, the average three-point shooters. You'd think logically they're practicing. They aren't. That's why he's the GOAT, because he never stops practicing that. He makes sure that like his strength's there. And then I agree, you definitely have to round your game out. Because actually, to go back to Loz's point, the best way to look at this is actually that it's not even about the T side. People are talking like Donk and Flames only play the T side and we American football now, boys. They're on the offense. The real reason why Flames has had this crazy glow up is obviously his T side's his best. But as you say, he has gotten his CT side to a level it has no business being, bearing in mind some of the spots he is playing. He is like the 15th best LAN rated player against top 20 teams this year on CT side. That's OP. You'll count. By the way, you already had Z who was like number one and fucking Rops is like 10th or something. You can't win against a team like that. Like, it's impossible. They already tear you up on T side. They have all the map pool. They have the superstar best player. If you then add in like, oh, they get to have a third player who's OP on CT, so yeah, it's game over at that point in time. You're not going to fit. And also, that definitely, I agree, that is not who he was before. In fact, if you go back even to last year and you remember that second season where he had mistakes, by the way, shout out to Flames. This implies he was listening. He was still in a team that won the major and was still in all the semis, but he didn't go, oh, well, boys, guess we just, got unlucky or get him next time. He understood, actually, maybe I'm fucking up because actually my numbers have gotten worse. And what he went and did was he changed from a player I always used to say would have been way better if it was American football and he only played offense, because he'd never play this guy on defense. I always used to say, that like mad hyphy style on T side. He just did that on CT side too. He was always jiggling a corner and pushing and trying to get out there. And that actually at this level was inappropriate. On an OG, you get away with that. That was actually what could cost you when you're on CT side if you were Vitality. So he shored his game up. He's actually mega now. It's not even about is he Donk. The fact is he can. By the way, the idea he even gets in that convo is like 5 stars out of 5, mate. That's insane.
Yeah, and I think the craziest thing about it as well is you would be genuinely shocked how many pros, even tier 1 pros, use this logic and have this mindset of, why would I need to watch my own demos? Because I already know what's going wrong.
Yep.
And like, we have these like team demo review sessions.
I won't say who, but there was a player once told me, I can just remember all the mistakes I made.
Yes,
it's so nuts, isn't it? It's so nuts.
But it's not a one-off.
All right, Rain Man.
People have this kind of self-delusion, if you know what I mean. And they don't realize that when you actually do go and watch your own POV back, you'll pick up on little things that could have really swung around if you'd like paid attention to it.
Yes.
You'll know like, oh, this player's here, but like I should have known in the moment that because this player's here, this is like a B stack or something, and I could have won the round off of that call. Like little things like that are what's made flameZ go from like as you mentioned as well. Just one final thing. We say he's like an anchor player on CT side. There's a difference in quality of CT anchor spots, right? Because if you're like an A anchor on Ancient, for example, that's actually kind of like a star role. Like you actually put up pretty big numbers there. flameZ isn't in those roles. He's playing long on Dust 2. He's in like some of the worst spots. He's like the A anchor on Mirage. These are not good spots at all. And he's putting up bonkers numbers. So yeah, nothing but love for flameZ at the minute.
I'm going to lightly commandeer this just as I've heard Thorin do for the self-indulgent rants here, where it's just that's something too where I have with analyst work, like, say what people will. I think if they're listening to this portion of the podcast, people are probably fans of myself and Thorin at this point. So maybe I don't need to give this primer, but some people won't like obviously the way that I construct takes or the things that I say or my opinions or anything like that on the desk. But I think one thing that is at this point, it's unfuckwittable that I obviously know my way around a broadcast. Okay, like I'm keeping the show smooth. I'm making sure that I almost sometimes have to operate like a secondary host if I can tell somebody's not a little rough around the edges as a host, where I'll make a point, give a little bit of runway, mention the other analyst's name so that they know I'm kind of tossing to them in the middle of it. And so the mechanics of what I'm doing on a broadcast are something that I've worked on for the last 6 years. And a lot of that came from the fact that in the beginning, without fail, I watched back every single one of my death segments for like 3 years straight. It was like probably until 2023 or 2022 when I finally started sometimes not watching my death segments back and seeing, okay, what did I do there? How did that relate to other people? Did that make them feel a certain way? Did that kind of bring the best out of them? Was it me conveying my point in the right way? Do I want to change the way I'm framing things? But so it's just obviously good practice in anything you do to just kind of look back at your work and try to pick apart what you're doing. It's why we proofread. It's why if you write an essay, you proofread what you did so that you can edit what it is. And the thing that's so great about writing is you can keep honing it till you give a final product. But in live environments like broadcasts and in obviously playing Counter-Strike, you can't really take things back. You can only do better the next time. But either way, if that's enough rambling for you about just talent work and stuff like that, you could actually listen to myself and Thorin in a different way. You could actually, with this message, of course, being sponsored by Raycon, you can upgrade your earbuds by going to www.buyraycon.com/snakeopen. Raycon are really, really pushing these essential open earbuds, which is a cool new way to kind of think about earbuds, where instead of it being, plugging your ears, you just all of it stuck in your head more or less. They're open back, so that it's just similar to when I use open back headphones when I'm on my computer, that you can hear everything that's going on around you. It's nice for me, for example. I do a lot of walks in nature. I go hiking on a super regular basis now. That's kind of become my hobby that maybe I'll start launderifying. I'll start posting way too many videos of it and making it my entire personality. No, I'm just kidding. I like that Launders likes golf. I like playing with him. But either way, even if you're golfing, you could use these as well. So if someone says 4 across the entire golf course, then you can hear them, and then you duck your head because you're using the Raycon Essential open earbuds, which obviously it makes being outside just feel easier. It's super comfortable. I've always talked about the fact that the battery life on these is fantastic. I think it's 8 hours for these. Every minute that you charge it in the case, you get 5 minutes back. So sometimes you'll leave them out because you're lazy or you're just not really careful with where you place things. You throw them in your bag without putting it in the case, and you say, "Oh my God, I only have like 2 minutes left on these." Well, just put them in for 5 minutes, and now you've got 27 minutes on your earbuds that you can listen to. So get them for 20% off by going to their website at www.buyraycon.com/snakeopen.
Okay. Now let's go to. Oh, by the way, Maui, all I heard from that blah 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 ball is like, it's just not true, is it? All you are is a hot take merchant who just says contrarian things, hates on Zebu and Polish people. Your own biases.
Classic, just classic. Yeah. Classic reductive Twitter user. Classic Reddit.
Okay, right. What is your good point, Maui?
My good point is actually I love just it's kind of it's not just the team, although you guys can feel free to pick it up like that, but just the exacting nature of the way PARIVISION plays Counter-Strike, which so frequently humbles the best teams in the world, or dare I say, not the best teams in the world, but the best players in the world, who happen to be spread across multiple teams as they are trying to play catch up in a Counter-Strike that is now it's starting to resemble what the end of CS:GO did. And what PARIVISION are doing, and what I mean by this is that my good point in general is just PARIVISION style. I when they play this style, which is just so by the book, they play the number advantages the way they should, where they give you absolutely nothing for free, where they play the man deficit situations by looking for an in, and if they can't find an in safely with a good utility combo or some good spacing or trading, then they just decide to retreat, play the next round. And by essentially playing the margins so carefully, they are able to pull off these upset victories versus teams that obviously have better players. I feel like this is, make no mistake, nobody on PARIVISION is in the running right now for me to be a top 20 player this year. I don't see any of them in that kind of company. I see glimpses of all of these players having moments. I kind of feel like maybe on a different team, Zwei could be a top 20 player more certainly. Maybe even James could be if he was a little bit more gung-ho with the way that he used the op. But I don't really see that from the other guys on a regular basis. And I don't really need to, because what's so cool about PARIVISION is that even though they're not building themselves up as individuals, they just play all of these moments so carefully, which has been drilled by Doston, drilled by James, and the way that they can regularly you can almost assume that they're going to pull off an upset victory against a team like an Aurora or a PARIVISION, or I mean a Falcons, or even sometimes like a Mouse. You know, they can beat these other teams that are just a little bit looser. Maybe Mouse isn't the best example because I think they play a pretty tight style, but teams like Aurora and teams like Falcons that are a little bit looser, a little bit more one note, I just love watching PARIVISION against them. So yeah, my good point in general is just PARIVISION style.
Go on then, Laz.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with that. I think what's unique about PARIVISION is a while ago I did another graph where I basically looked at like how tight, like physically in terms of distance on the map, the players are in the average round. And PARIVISION is one of these teams that likes to play super slow and super tight together. So like that fully matches your eye test, right, when you're watching them play. And the other thing that they're really good at is they're one of the highest like trade success teams, because if you think about how many trade opportunities that a team creates, like how many times a player dies and there's at least one player that's capable of refragging, they are like the top of any team in tier 1 right now. And to your point about how they don't necessarily have the best firepower, not to make this all about graphs or whatever, but I mentioned earlier you can sort of plot like the team's average finishing or like their win rate or whatever against something like dual swing or something like kills per round. Again, PARIVISION are one of those teams that they do way more than they should. They're massive overperformers in terms of the pieces they have, and even just like the fragging numbers that they have individually, because they don't really have one player who's like a star. Like maybe you consider James like quite a good AWPer. He's definitely at least above average, but I can't point to any player on PARIVISION and say this player like should get picked up by a better team and would like improve them, if you know what I mean. And I don't think any of the players are bad either. I think they're so good at doing it by committee, and they have such a good system and structure that they don't need a star. They just rely on trading. They trust James' calls, and it works for them.
Yeah, I've actually got some stats for you for that. So first of all, on T side, on LAN this year against top 20, they are the 5th best team at trading on the T side. That's impossible with these players. Like, that's why James and Daslan have to get loads of credit for doing this. Like, because to me, I actually think on both sides, they've essentially streamlined Counter-Strike. On CT side, they actually do what back in the day, we all love this analogy, they do what Heroic used to do, where Cadian just says jump, and you don't even say how high, you just jump. On CT side, they used to just instant react, and if he had the read, which he wasn't even as good as Jim, it was good. That was a good style against top teams that were better than you. On T side, what we're talking about here is even though they play slow, you just keep everyone together, and essentially you just have hard protocols for like instantly trade. I've always thought, by the way, insta trade with like slight stagger, so you're not both going at the same time and lining up and getting killed. It's probably the most OP strategy in the history of Counter-Strike. It's the equivalent of basketball's pick and roll. It will always be a thing because it's just how humans get moved around the area. Like, it will always work. A 1-2 in football. These things will always exist and will always be effective. The real problem is why other teams are unable to implement them, because sadly, other teams are letting people think individualistically. And so you have some really good playmaker player who baits the guy who runs around the corner as the hard entry because I got flashed and I wasn't quite sure of the angle or something. The difference is these guys, for real, like the joke would be, I'll extend it further, right? I actually do think on both sides they have a hive mind. They just do whatever they're told. They don't question it. They just do whatever they're told. Like they're like fucking Zerglings in StarCraft or something. They just swarm you. And it's really effective. It's actually low-key effective. The reason that's even a good analogy is obviously the Zerg units were like weaker, weren't they? But the idea is they just mass ran you. And so you weren't fighting one-on-one. Because also, I'll give you another stat as well. As well as being 4th highest for trade, they are 5th highest on LAN for 4v5 percentage. You shouldn't even be able to do that without star players. What? That would make you assume you have like some donk type figure or something, by the way. Like, you fucking must be insane. So to me, Jim and Dastard have to get mad credit. And let me just give you also, since you referenced it, the other area you noticed this is where I'll never say the next thing the fan wants me to say. So, you admit Jim is the best dad. No, here's why. Because you know what happens when they don't play the top 5 and the top 10 teams? They could lose to anyone. I told you, if you sent them to Dracula, I guarantee they'd lose at least one series. They would. They would just lose one randomly. The joke is, if you put them in a game tomorrow just a group stage against people like Foot, they can easily lose. Of course they can. So a part of the reason why is because they're also doing this in response to how the best teams play. That like controlled style, the slower style, playing very predictable. So I've got one that's a banger for you. Obviously, we're talking about how do they affect and neutralize the best teams in the world. Well, I'll tell you, the obvious place you'd start is the best players. So let's take the 3 best players of last year and listen to these numbers. So Ziwu, when he plays against a team like Mouse, much more skilled team, much more veteran team, he gets a 1.74 rating. Obviously, these are limited sample size. When he plays against PARIVISION, that goes down to 1.29. When Donk plays against Na'Vi, is a 1.65 rating. When he plays against Furia, is a 1.43. Even he goes down to 1.26 against PARIVISION. Modesty against Furia, 1.32 rating. Against PARIVISION, 1.05. Literally the studs, the greatest players you're going to have. In theory, the most OP weapons in the game just can't perform the same way against PARIVISION. And I'll throw one last thing out there. Here's the part that ended up being inadvertently genius about having these young players that just do what you say. It's even why, by the way, as an aside, it's the way it actually fits the team. Because on CT side, all he ever did was just sit like a turret anyway. He never was the player making all credit. He's not even that good a T-side player for me. So the reason why it's actually also genius is the style when they used to have Yekindar, where Jim was really baity with the AWP. Spoiler, he used to be, and he still is. Fucking Mitch Hedberg joke there. That actually works really well in this team, though, because if you ever see Jim, he's not actually peeking and taking a duel against m0NESY. If m0NESY comes out on Mirage and shoots someone, Jim kills him from like the off angle that's slightly off the edge of that you have to go to kill the guy that Jim's trading on. So also, it's no wonder even with Jim, like an above average but not elite AWP, where they're mega effective with it. It's almost like the most genius style for Jim. You actually have almost reverse engineered a style that will work for him. And then on T side, you just send all these guys in. Spoiler, by the way, he still saves a billion fucking AWPs. Don't worry about that. But even then, if people remember when VP came up, that was a classic thing that players used to say, that even though as analysts we'll just go, bro, you're giving up like 2 or 3 rounds you could have gone for. You could have won that game that you lost by 2 rounds. Here's why as a player, though, it's really frustrating when the guy saves the AWP. Because people have told me who are top pros, it feels like when you're on T side and you're playing against the JMC T side, even if they lose the round, you can't be certain, will he have an AWP this round though? He even buys glass cannon AWP. So as a result, you never get the feeling you do against Falcons when you know they're low buy. Like, at least m0NESY doesn't have the AWP. We can go here. You might go there and it's like, did he buy glass cannon? He just off-angled me there. Like, that is really frustrating for pros. I actually agree. I think the style, by the way, you said it at the end, the best there. Any team, I said this when they won Blast Bounty, any team, if you have the following attributes, you are going to have a bad time against PARIVISION. Do you have a weak caller who calls one style of game? That's going to be really bad for you. Do you have fraggers, but you play really predictably? It's going to be really bad for you. Like, do you choke in the late rounds of games? That's why, by the way, that's the last reason I know it has to be a hive mind. Because I'm sorry, I do not believe fucking Zello and Nota lay it round are like, oh, whoa. Let me cook. Hold up. Let me cook. I'm peak NiKo Cold Zero reading the game. They're just fucking doing what they're told, mate. But because they do what they're told, by the way, there's a famous saying that, like, it's better to all... There's a great saying that says it's better for 5 players to follow a bad plan than for 5 players to each have, like, their own good plan, basically. So actually, it's made the team play crazy, and I agree. They had no business being this good as a team. It's actually kind of, like, based that they are. Like, I don't even blame them. I blame the other teams for not being able to beat them. Even that
the James saving thing as well.
Go on.
Like, I know it gets understated sometimes, and people say like James changed his style a bit, whatever. I don't really like the way that HLTV looks at like weapon percentage usage, because the way that they do it is just based on kills with the weapon.
Right.
So in theory, if you're an AWPer that has the AWP all the time, but you're not very good with it, you'll still have like quite a high AWP kills per round, right? Because you've just got it loads. So what I like doing instead is looking at the percentage of the time that player spends alive with the weapon. And if you do that, Jame and Shiro are like way higher than everyone else. Like way higher. It's not even close. So forget about their like AWP kills per round. Yeah, Jame is saving that still, like he always does.
Of course. Okay, if you want to talk about self-indulgent points, that's not even I'm not even involved in this. It's just, listen, there's one thing I fucking love. Tell you what, you'll get any more of that confirmation bias? I could eat it up. Tell you what, boys, I just love being right. What did I tell you when they did this trade between G2 and TL? I told you, bro, even though Malbs, I'm sorry, is arguably a worse player than Nerds, this move I actually think even helps Liquid. A lot of people only saw it from the G2 side. They're like, what a steal. You got rid of Malbs, you got Nerds in, and he's paired with Saw. It's going to be great. Might happen, by the way. It hasn't happened yet, but it might happen. Here's the good. Bro, the dream happened. Malbs coming over made Elige really good again. Like at that, if people don't know, here's his stats from Blast Rotterdam, where they only played Spirit and Mongols. By the way, you can't say Mongols is shit, you can't say Spirits is shit. They're just teams that have limitations, but they're playoff teams generally, right? Against those two teams collectively on LAN, he was 1.34 rating, 1.2 T side, 1.49 CT side, and he had 0.84 KPR. Like, these are like superstar numbers. Yes, only on the initial outing, of course, and then we're not going to count the small lands because who the fuck cares what you're doing there. But the point is, the reason it was my dream is, what didn't work for Malbs in G2 is I think both him, the joke is, you know, we just said kyousuke and NiKo should sort of both be the sort of playmaker. I actually think both Matisse and Malbs are the fucking hard entry, but they were like, yeah, they're playmaker now, Matisse, and then he wasn't quite good enough for that, and then Malbs was just hard entry for someone who wasn't going to do anything. The joke is, Elige, despite the fact he'd convinced himself he was the hard entry, he should always be like he was in old Liquid and back in 2019. He should just be the playmaker who trades you. And if you put Malbs as to go in, bro, both their roles just work now, and it's brought Elige back to life. And this is the one actual, like, copium you ever had if you were a Liquid fan. It's like, yeah, they suck, but on paper these could be good players. So if you can get Elige good again, if everyone's telling me he's difficult, you have to play the game his way, then we better get his fucking numbers up, because then it justifies it. So as an Elige admirer, I think already I've got quite hopeful feelings. I don't know about the squad overall, but it seems like this is just what the doctor ordered for Elige. Thoughts, Loz?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm one of the few people that thinks Liquid actually kind of won this trade. And the reason why is because Malbs and Nerds are two completely different types of aggressive rifler. Like, I haven't heard it talked about enough, really, but when you think about, like, aggressive riflers, you have got players like Elige, players like NiKo. They're willing to go for a lot of aggressive duels, but the way they do it is they go for fights early on into rounds on their own timing with a lot of setup, and they're not necessarily, like, dedicated bomb site entries. If you need a player to take space on a map and go into a contested area, I've basically been working on this model that, like, uses the nav mesh of the actual maps themselves, and it, like, categorizes all the different areas into either CT controlled, T controlled, or like contested.
By the way, I can totally see now. This is why I hope people follow your Twitter, etc. Because I like the way you don't just have idle thoughts. You're like, actually, I'll just run my Cray supercomputer and check. Oh, yeah, that's actually correct. Actually, I've invented a new graph, and actually, that I figured out you don't just have to spitball it. It's quite a good angle.
I'm genuinely quite obsessive when it comes to this stuff. I'll be lying in bed at night thinking, I don't like the way that we're currently measuring aggression. I want to figure out a new way or whatever. But yeah,
as opposed to that Nero who just goes, how does this benefit Monacy though?
Yeah, we all know it. No, So if you actually look at like traded death opportunities, so when a player dies,
The amount of stats you've got are ridiculous. Go on, hit me with it. Go on, hit me with this.
I've got too many things.
Okay.
And you look at the amount of times a player on T side goes into a contested area, right? Then you've got a way better proxy for if they're like an entry instead of like a star opener, right? And Malbs is way more of this star opener. Is more of this like entry type, right?
Okay.
He's willing to be sacrificial, willing to go in.
Yes,
in first.
absolutely, yeah.
And that sets up the kind of player like Elige who wants to be aggressive on his own timing and is like more favorable towards being second in, right? He wants to trade a guy.
Yes, absolutely.
And previously in Liquid, it was Shuey doing that. And he was not very good at it. Look at his T-side numbers. They are appalling, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, you look at G2. I think G2 have a major problem with the way their roles are constructed. Because remember earlier I told you that on CT side, Hunter is one of the most like selfish in terms of resources and spots of any IGL. It's a little bit similar on T side as well. He's not the kind of IGL that's willing to die first for the team. He's not just running in first so that his teammates can trade him. Like you said, he's making like Matisse and Mulbs do it, right? They're sort of taking turns doing it. And because they have this kind of weird structure, think about what they've done. They've lost one of those aggressive sacrificial entry pieces, and they've traded it for another like star selfish like resource hog, right? So it just seems like a mess for me in terms of the roles. And
I've got a clarifying question for you before Maui goes, which is you said earlier you're a role cell. The joke is people think I'm the original role cell because I actually defined some of the roles and played it and told people how to construct rosters. But what people don't get is because I'm not a stats nerd, I have to just go off like things I hear and things I see slightly in the game, which is hard to know. One of the things, it seems like you're the ultimate role cell, bro, because what you're doing now is actually something I think we needed. I'll give the quick analogy. A lot of pros disagree with this, by the way. A lot of pros don't believe in roles. Like a lot of them actually, the joke is most of the IGLs do, I notice, but a lot of the actual pros and stars, I think it is most typified what Snacks said back in the day. I think it was around the time he played in Mouse when people said he was in the wrong role. He said something like he thinks it should just be like hockey and you just have, like fucking defenseman and forward. He wanted there to be 3 roles. I think one was like attacker, maybe like lurker, and I don't know what the other one would even be, like, I don't know, fucking hold or something. He had 3 broad definitions, and then he did that thing, the dreaded line. And then within those roles, everyone should know how to play all the ways. Whereas what you're pointing out here is, think about how many super teams we've made where it's like, but what if Electronic played with Axile? And then you just find out, no, there's different types of aggressive entry player though. Neither of them are going to be your pure hard entriness. You know what? It feels like actually being even more drilling down and trying to get more divisive is actually better for potentially constructing teams. Do you think so?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mentioned earlier that I was cooking up some prototype for like a roster move simulator, right? And the entire point of that is I want to look at players' like tendencies. So like I mentioned, are they more of like an entry type that's willing to be like first in on a bomb site execute, or are they just like running it down mid with a flash and taking like an advantage fight, right? Because there's a massive difference between those two. And yeah, I think you're completely right. I think these kind of stats are actually quite essential for especially like roster building in the lower tiers. So I'm kind of surprised that nobody's made this kind of thing before. But the way I look at it is like, if nobody's made it, I'll do it. That's good for me, right? Because I love doing this stuff. So yeah.
Yes. Anyway, just go to his Twitter and he has all that shit on it all the time. Right. Okay, Maui, what do you think about this point?
I think I feel like
skepticism.
It's nice to see Elige come back. To the level that he played at Rotterdam.
Listen, Maui, we all know our biases. I understand that when Twistzz can't hit a barn door with a frying pan, that's karrigan's fault. But when Elige plays really well, that's just like, it's probably just a blip on the radar. Don't worry about it. So I get how the biases appear. It's all good. We're all friends here. It's all good.
No, I might lightly red herring this point where I just am like, but is it enough? But is it enough for me to actually think Liquid's gonna jump to the top or anything like that again? But the thing is,
the problem is my show is they haven't done a show this week. When they do the show next week, I'll make the point. Elige will be a HLTV top 20 player. There you go. Suck that dick. I'll do it. I'll put myself out there. We'll put the stakes.
Oh
out.
yeah.
That's also what that show is for. It's supposed to be just like trying to. Actually, I was right all along. It's all that shit in it, And then if you're wrong, you go, hey, we're just making hot takes here, guys. It's just a show.
I'll say this. Okay, I think I worked a couple of the games that were at Rotterdam for Liquid, or maybe at least one, I think I worked the last one they did, and then I looked back at the other ones at it, and they, and I do think that this Liquid has a better constitution of players than what the previous one was. I thought the other one was, I think that the last one just always felt a little bit bit clumsy. It always it felt this one to me it flows a little bit better. I think that if Elige is reinvigorated and Mobs can actually also just I think Mobs is also best as an anchor too, and I think that kind of which should allow Shuhei to play more of what he wanted to do on CT side. Like I think Shuhei had to move to some pretty unfavorable spots, but when he was on Maus, he was actually playing a lot of the good spots, and now that he gets to go back, I think he should get to go back to a few of the good spots, and Mobs can go to the anchor spots in his stead. That's good for me because but I also God, do I want to damn it. It's like I can't talk about Liquid without saying isn't there somebody better than Ultimate? Like that's the biggest problem I have with this team.
Sure.
So I couldn't keep it, and I tried to have a serious point about just Elige and Mobs and that it's great and that it even boosts Shuhei too, but I just don't think that this team could expect to be I don't even know if they can be a consistent top 10 with Ultimate playing like he does. He's sometimes okay, but it's like one series per tournament. I think he's good.
Listen, I'm with you. Since his first name is Roland, fuck it, we'll expand the material. Can't saying Ultimate sucks. This Roland is more of a hack than Roland Emmerich, if you know the reference in movie. Pretty good one actually, if you know. Anyway, my point is just this. Fuck it, I'll pretend I'm on the desk and just complete the thought. I'm just saying, Maui, that for Elige, Malb's MD is just what the doctor ordered. Well, that's still better than anything Debris did. Don't worry about it. Poker face. Everyone poker face. Good. Right, we've got it over the line. Okay. Now we go to the ugly. So LuzRaposa, what is ugly?
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot about this actually because I was thinking of saying like, G2, Falcon Spirit, whatever, but it's too obvious. So I figured I'd say Flyquest actually. And more specifically, I wanted to say...
I once said that, but yeah, you're going to mean for a different reason. Shout out to the deep large.
I was going to say for the career arc of JKS most.
Ooh, how dare you? How dare you, sir?
Look, I'm not flaming him. That's the part I'm going to say. But if you rewind back to the 2019 Berlin Major, right?
Sure.
That's the time when, for me at least, like that Renegades team really came online.
Yeah,
they really popped up on people's radar because they upset Ents in that quarters. And I don't know if you know, but like JKS especially had a really good track record against some of the bigger teams, like especially Zywoo's Vitality. He used to batter them every time. And so there was all this conversation about like which team is he going to end up on, because the idea was he would go to Europe, join one of these super teams, whether it's like Cloud9 Colossus or a FaZe or whatever, right? And he would be able to play in Europe, collect some trophies, get loads of experience, and then the idea was he would go back to Australia eventually, because remember, not everyone was a super team at this point, not everyone was international, and he would be able to kind of elevate the up and coming new players in that scene. But the reason I have to say this is ugly is because, for one, like even though JKS did manage to have quite a good individual career, I feel like he ended up on that Cole team to begin with, which he had like really weird role clashes with Blame F, and he basically lost like maybe 2 years of his peak form. And then when we actually did finally get to see him do well on FaZe and G2, and he picked up the Katowices and the Cologne, we kind of got a taste of like what he had in him the entire time. And I've got a soft spot for any of these players that like massively overperform relative to the roles they're in. He's like king of that, basically. He's like a Rops light for my money. And now it's like he's gone back to Flyquest, and like who is there that he can pass that experience on to? Like at least when it was the Renegades team, they were at least like the dominant one in their region, right? They would always like have Ty Lu's number and like all the Greyhound teams and teams beneath them. And now it's like they just lost to Alter Ego, a team with Pokemon, Bentet, and like Gratis Faction.
Bentet's still alive. Holy fuck! Okay.
Pokemon.
Yeah, I know.
Like, these are players, aren't they? But they used to batter these exact players back in like 2018, and now it's the other way round. It's like Cloud Cuckoo. I genuinely don't understand like how it's gotten this bad, but I think that the thing I've got to point to say that it's ugly is like JKS himself has been fantastic, but there's just no one to carry the torch. Like there's not a talent even close to his level out of the Australian scene, and Flyquest is suffering.
Okay, to explain biases first, I'm quite close with Papa Smithy. I would consider Papa Smithy to be one of my friends. We both lived in LA, came over to my apartment we would go out every now and then, especially when I came back from events. He was a guy that I like a lot, and so I'll put it like this. I both understand but also disagree with how Flyquest carried out the season. So for context, for people that aren't really paying attention to them, they only played 4 events. They're in the middle of their 4th right now. And they're basically saying that because we're in the Asian region, we know that if we just kind of stay the top dogs in Oceania, Asia, we'll make it to the major just fine. We're never going to overtake the Mongols anyways. So they're getting by doing the bare minimum. It's actually pretty absurd to look at this, that in 2026, JKS has only played 33 maps. He's only played 33 maps of CS. For context, like Vitality have played, I think, already 47. They played 47 this season already, and that's I get it, because you can just get by like this, and you're gonna get a major invite. You're gonna get back everything that you put into Counter-Strike this year, and probably more. They're probably, if I have to guess from what they're doing, they're probably a profitable organization.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
I would actually say. I would say without leaking, they are like definitely they're definitely doing well for themselves.
They're not paying huge salaries, etc.
That and also they are, because they're Australian. It's kind of like they get it's like a semi version of the America buff, where if you're an American team, you can gather all the sponsors for that entire country, and it's a big market. So you can, if you're the premier esports organization in that country, it's worth a lot more than just being kind of like, good from, I don't want to say a country that people will get in, Croatia. Let's just say that. Like, let's say you're the best country, you're the best team from Croatia, and it's a cool country. That's why I'm saying. Like,
well, I love is inadvertently.
No one's digging it.
He picked a Balkan country of all ones. I would have just said like UK, mate. No one's gonna get that mad at you. You picked a fucking Balkan one. They're gonna go. They get there.
Okay, my bad.
They're pulling out creative
case. Like endpoint for the UK doesn't really get to get a lot from being that that country. Like it's not as valuable. Let's just say that it might not be as valuable as being Australia.
Exactly.
Either way, it's. So what I'm seeing with them is that they're going to all these lands. Like, they're not on my radar. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not really going back into Flyquest games that carefully or anything like that. But I do see that their ranking has dropped off dramatically. But hey, they're still going to get that major invite. Doesn't really matter. And the way I would relate it is just kind of like, it's just like a muscle atrophying from not using it. It's just that when you're a player,
have you been hitting the gym a lot recently? A lot of muscle analogies. I know. What you think?
No.
Watching Arnold Schwarzenegger documentaries. What's going on with Maui at the moment?
I just think that it's an easy analogy.
All right,
that's all. Okay. It's like an okay. I would almost relate it to this. It's that an astronaut going into space is like playing in the Asia region intentionally.
Okay. He also just watched Project Hail Mary. Okay, keep going. Yeah. I know your whole life is just based on this podcast.
Just guessing everything I've been doing lately. All I've been doing is hiking. Like, that's all I'm doing.
There you go. Okay.
That's all I'm doing lately. Okay, so no, it's just like that. It's just that you go to the Asia region, you play there, and it's just that the practice isn't as good. You're not gonna stay as in form as you would if you were to sit your ass down and play in European tournaments. Flyquest themselves turned down at least one European tournament. I know that they turned down the bounty at the beginning of the season. I think they might have turned down at least one more also, because they know that if they just keep going to these Chinese or Australia events and just keep farming them, they're fine. Nothing's going to happen to them. They're going to still make it to the major. They're going to get a huge return on their investment with the sticker money. And so what's the big deal? It's good. So what I fear for them, and why I understand what they do, but the disagree aspect is that I think you should go to at least one or two. Make sure that your players stay informed. The reason that you're at the top of your region is because you have all of that European experience as regularly as you do. But if you play a whole season out with only a Draculan as your sole European exposure, that's not good enough. That's not going to be. I definitely just don't think that's going to keep you at the top. And I don't think Semper Fi is going to overtake them tomorrow. But if there were ever a time for an Australian team or Oceania team to rise up to the occasion, this would be it.
I don't really have that many thoughts about Flyquest, because here's how I follow Flyquest's career. I don't. I wait till the major and then go, they look all right, I guess. Maybe they can win this BO3 against this really bad team. What are the odds? Fuck it. Send it. And then I try to do that thing where it's like I'm on one horse, and then the second they do win that one, I'm straight off though. The second they play anyway. Once they get to the next stage, it's like now we are cynically 0-3. We are picking against them all the time. So I don't really give a fuck about this team. In fact, the one thing actually I like about it, in line with Loz's point, is it's just somewhere JKS gets to keep playing CS, be still a better player. Obviously, he's like a star in their team, and he gets to have a career and go to the majors. It's kind of cool for legacy reasons, isn't it? But they're not really that much of a competent team, and I definitely agree. If you're going to be the team that stays in a region, obviously Liquid's just done that where you go back. I want it to be that, like, yes, you benefit from you getting easy path to the major, but then you also double up. You also then try to be a real top 10 team while also getting the easy path to the major. I don't want it to just be that you go, right, fuck it, we can kick back. It doesn't matter that we lose all these random ass games. As long as we get to the major, who cares? Because again, that they play in the one region where it's almost impossible for them to not make the major. Like, there's no way they can do. I mean, they'd have to go and like a giga Aurora and fuck every single VRS point up or something like that. So that wouldn't even work, because in their region they would just win most of those games. Like, they don't have that crazy tier 2 and tier 3 of Europe that we have, which, as people like Aurora find it out, they can get you on the wrong day, mate. That's some bird strike shit. Again, sort of, the bird isn't as good a plane. Tell you what, it's brilliant, effective at blowing up fucking engines when it goes in there. So I was also, this is one of those ones where I just don't care enough about Flyquest. Here's how you know, guys. Even they've broken me. In a way I've never been brought, because I was going to work through a whole thing that caused, like, you know, their Flyquest and the logo's a leaf. Well, you know, since they lost to Pokemon, well, in Pokemon, of course they'd lose because their weakness is against fight. I can't even be bothered to land the plane on that one. Fuck it. I'm jumping out with a parachute. I gave you the first part. Who gives a shit? And essentially, you're just left to go, perhaps they're wondering why a man would jump out of a plane when he flew the plane and seemed like he was going to land. So there's no reason. There's nothing going there. The point is, I just expertly filled time on a desk about a game I didn't watch. Shout out some of the analysts. I can tell which ones you don't watch. Where I just had to say some points that sounded like they made sense, some platitudes, to go, oh, that player's good. We all know from the back in the days. And yeah, they're going to have to do better at the major. Because actually, the real problem with this team, by the way, I will make one serious last point, is this is actually where Maui had a hot take last year, which was right. On paper, this is the most raw skilled Australian oceanic type squad ever. It actually did have the chance to be like the super team of talents, but it just doesn't really manifest, unfortunately. Like, in their region, they dominate because that's the weakest region in Counter-Strike. When they go to tier 1, they haven't really made a significant enough jump up that anyone can actually get hyped about them, unfortunately. So that's why I actually just agreed to put them in ugly. Like, they're not terrible. Obviously, they're doing fine. Also, even Maui, that's how you know he's friendly with Papa Smithy. He did all that critique, and at the end, he just went, but hey, they're at the major. Like, what's that? That's money in the bank. Like, fucking all dancing. You know, we're here. Like, that's the copium of the century, but whatever. It's what Flyquest is. We all get it. We all get it. Right, Maui, what is your ugly point? Is it about muscles?
The way that some people only work out their chest has just gotten appalling. My ugly point, I wouldn't even say you could consider something like this ugly, because it's just simply not watched. It's that the LAN circuit to get to the major is, some people like it. I understand the appeal of it. I've talked about actually how, I mean, there's a lot of points, and that's why it's in the ugly, is because the good is that it's revived a tier 2 LAN scene that otherwise really had no reason to exist. It is giving opportunities for kind of like tertiary TOs to actually get their foot in the door and to try to see what they can pull out, and maybe that can actually build up and snowball into some kind of bigger gigs or things for them in the future. I think that also the path to the major itself as a whole for the VRS is generally good, but my ugly point is that the RMRs were better, and there's a couple reasons here, but the RMRs were better for the reason that people actually watch them. People actually watch them. Yeah. So the game, by the way, so I look back at just a kind of a random one. I'm just typing, like, I'm not going through ES chart. ES charts actually rate limits you if you try to go through too many tournaments too quickly. And I even tried going like private tabs and stuff like that. Still fucking knows who I am. I don't know, like whatever. But it's just that, the RMRs had extremely good viewership. Sure. They were incredibly compelling. They were one of the biggest moments of the calendar for Counter-Strike. And 40,000 people watch Fnatic beat FaZe and take them out of the major running. It's just
okay.
You could go to day one of Blast Open Rotterdam and you look at like the lowest viewed game and it's beating it practically. And I even noticed I woke up the day that FaZe got taken out and I was like, oh, let me see what the timeline's saying about this. Nobody fucking watched the game. Like clearly nobody actually watched the game because everybody's tweet is just like, man, this is sad, or hey, this is bad. Or
the joke is, Maui, all we watched Jesper Enkind 222's account update us like they're just losing map one. If they move like oh, what's coming? It's like getting an actual telegram, mate. It was mental. I wasn't watching the game. Actually, why the fuck would I? I'm not mental.
No, nobody watched it. Nobody's watching this, like that's just what I mean. It's just so I think that it hurts the scene in terms of story building in a way, because at the end of the day, we can then look back at it and be like, man, Frozen, good box score number there, Frozen. Exactly. Really got to save this guy. But it's like, do I even know why they were bad in this game? Like, who was the biggest culprit? Who was at fault here? I mean, it should be my job to find these things out, but like, every single, like watching a Draculan every single day, like, should we just get Trotta on the show? Like, is Trotta gonna tell me? Because he's streaming for 16 hours every single day. Like, surely he can tell me something about this one. Because when I went to Twitter and even like post-game threads on Reddit, like nobody clearly has any sentient thoughts about what transpired in these maps of play. Like I actually, so that's the ugly part for me. It's just that the RMRs were flawed in some ways because of, I don't think that Na'Vi and Vitality should be playing an RMR right now, but at the same time, they were at least watchable.
Yeah, I think I definitely get that, but like Thorin's equivalent of Flyquest just being like it's a bit of a who cares. That's kind of this point for me, because like from my perspective, I'm kind of with you. I don't really care whether it's like an RMR or whether it's this new like Draculan and like whatever the smaller tournaments are that have to be played to qualify to the major. It's like I just kind of watch when the major happens, and I enjoy the fact that as an outcome of this now, when I watch the major, I don't have to watch like the best teams struggle in like not tier 3 in the lowest stage of the major against like some random teams that they're never going to make it. Like we don't see those kind of upsets anymore, and as a result, like most of the good teams that I actually want to see get deep in the major, they tend to do that now. So yeah, I kind of agree with your ugly point, that in the sense that like the reason it's good for me is because there are people now that will tune in to watch like FaZe at a Draculan, or to watch like PARIVISION, because their roster's kind of new now. And for the health of the scene, it's definitely good that people who otherwise just wouldn't ever watch are now looking at like Draculan. But from my perspective, it's one of those where it doesn't really make any difference.
If people know, I am one of the, I'll be the last Japanese soldier fighting World War II on that island, bro. Like, I am the enemy of the RMRs forever. Death to the RMRs. The RMR delenda est. Like, I'm fucking that guy. I will never, ever break on it. But I'm willing to concede, because here's the problem. People also forget about the RMR. I think the other part about the RMR that blows is because it's regional. It means what you're basically saying is, like, as you say, like, you have to compete against all these shit-hot European teams. But then the RMRs for the other regions are piece of piss. The only reason the Americas was ever controversial is they kept using the stupidest formats known to man. Like, they would do stuff like take a Swiss system and not even run all the rounds, and then be like, oh, I know you won 2-1 and he won 2-1, but flip a coin, I guess he wins. What are you talking about, you lunatic? Like, so if you just run normal tournaments, like, here's the real problem. All you really mean is you want an EU RMR. That's what you all mean. You don't want fucking Oceania RMR. You don't want America's RMR. By the way, it would be even worse on the America's one too, because this didn't happen. If like a Team Liquid Super Team didn't make it through, they had one shot at it. Afterwards, by the way, LANs are actually half decent. They can make like playoffs and shit. Like, didn't matter. They had the one crack. If you have 2 bad days, lose 2 BO1s and a BO3, you're out of the tournament. So my problem is, the reason I'm against RMRs is what they fundamentally are fucking blows. It's shit. I'll say this though. I am totally willing, I've always said it, to go back to what we used to have, which is have stage 1, take that out, it's trash anyway, just call that the major qualifier. and then have all these teams. That's what VRS gets you into if you're not already in the major. It gets you into a major qualifier, which is a big LAN that everyone attends. And then, since it's a big LAN everyone attends, and in this case it would have had FaZe in and fucking Liquid, it would actually be watched. Because here's the other key point that we're all making here is we don't have to have what we have now. At the moment, people are going to, if you didn't see, by the way, before FaZe was able to sign up to this like HLC LAN in Belgrade, which no one even knows anywhere, they also were considering like, is it too late to get into this Spanish LAN no one's heard of? Like, that's what the problem is these are shitter LANs. Like, if this LAN was run by DreamHack or Star Ladder or something like that, and it was a real LAN, you would watch it. If you were told the last chance of FaZe is at this Star Ladder Tier 2 LAN, where essentially if they come, and you knew it all in advance, if they come top 8, then they make it, then you would probably tune in. Shall I tell you another reason people don't know, and I agree with you, Mary, this is how you know they're not watching the LANs. These LANs are so amateurish. Most of them for the last 2 weeks, by the way, have been these LANs where you just play all your group stage games or your first games on the same day. You just play like 1v1 at 12:30, then 1v1 at 3:30, then 1v1 against different teams. Like we've actually gone back in time 20 years. Like, this is crazy. So shit like that also means that you can't watch it, Maui. Like if you're in America, you can't watch the game that's at 11, and then you can't watch the game that's at 1. You live in California, bro. So also that doesn't make sense. Like if it was a real tournament, you'd have not only you'd have the discoverability. You'd go on Twitch. It'd be the main thing. It'd be the channel you're already following, Star Ladder, whatever it might be, ESL Blast, whatever it could be. You'd have all those aspects, and then also. What's the last thing as well? There's one more thing. Also, another thing that's shit about these LANs is, this is the other problem with VRS we need to fix. There has to be, you know how for Tier 1, you have to announce in advance the tournaments way in advance. Now, obviously, they do years, but I'd make a short amount, like 3 months or something. You announce the tournament, and people can't really join the tournament last day. They have to have gotten the invite in advance, etc., etc. One of the other problems with this is, and it's made it cynical, and this is what I think's ruined some of the VRS, is we've made it now. I'll give a very quick analogy. If people don't know, when the World Series of Poker popped off in the early 2000s, and it became worth millions and millions to be in the main event and you could get lucky and make a run, what people would do is, and a lot of people won't know this, it costs $10,000 to enter though. So because it costs $10,000 to enter, what you would do if you were an all-right poker player or an amateur and you don't have $10,000, you would go to the casino where the World Series of Poker is held, like Billions or whatever, and you would go and they'd have these things called satellites. And it would be like, you put 1,000 in and everyone puts the 1,000 in and the winner gets the 10K and can enter the main event. And what you would do is, if you lost, you go and enter another one. And you can get 3 or 4 cracks at being in the main event off for 3K instead of paying 10K and going straight in and losing, but you don't have 10K. So that's what these VRS lands feel like, especially with the behaviour of some of these squads like Liquid and FaZe. It feels like they cynically, even though at Tier 1 there'd be a set amount of events with invites that you already know, they get to, that's another reason no one watches Melbourne, because no one knows even the tournament it is. Like, some of these lands, by the way, were back to back to back to back, some of them in the same location. It would be like, this is one tournament, is this online or LAN? You could never tell. Then this next one at the same LAN, the next day is a LAN, and 2 days after that there's another LAN. What are we doing here? That's half the problem. There's no schedule, there's no discoverability, you can't tell what it is. And so as a result, you are just checking on the timeline, like, what's going on? Oh, they're playing now. The joke is, when Aurora and Liquid lose, people are like, what tournament was it in? Like, there's like 3 tournaments that have gone on in the last week or so. And then apparently now, these other tournaments that would have been nothing lands, like this Belgrade and Spanish one, they might suddenly become something because these teams last second can go, wait, I was eliminated. No, I wasn't. Lol, I have another $1,000 in Thorin's satellite analogy. I'll enter another tournament. The suffering must fucking be more severe or whatever. It keeps going. It never stops. And then the last thing is, listen, viewership definitely would be way better for like a real RMR/qualifier, but it will never be as good as the ones that were before Maui, because they did have the best teams in the world. It'll be in between. It'll have more because it'll be a real tournament. It'll also have some top teams there. It'll never be what it was to, like as you say, all the best teams had to play the RMR. Remember, there was no direct qualification to the major for about like 7 years, something ridiculous, probably less than that, but it was something maybe like 5 years, something like that. So I do think, like, my problem is, I don't know that RMR is a solution, but I'm willing to offer you a compromise of a major qualifier that people call it. And then lastly, I said this on Twitter, and I think I've come up with the secret fix, but I'm not a stats nerd like Lars, so I don't know if this would actually work out if you put it into practice. My solution is this: you make essentially two. You know how here's the thing people don't know, but I'll just remind you all MVPs aren't created equal, are they, you fuck? If you get an MVP at a PGL or back in the day it used to be like a tier 1.5 DreamHack Open, I don't really give a monkeys. You don't get to count that on your list like those dickhead basketball fans where they go like Kobe versus LeBron and they count like all-star appearances and shit. It's like, that's not even a metric in greatness, you fool. That's like a fan thing. So similarly, all MVPs aren't created equal. It's way better to win one at the major, kind of massive stacked event. So similarly, all VRS points shouldn't be equal. Like, I shouldn't be able to get the same 30 VRS points at tier 1 lands playing real teams as I get playing nobodies at the Birch Cup. So what I want is 2 tiers of VRS points. And my tiers are like this. Tier 1 earned VRS points get you into the stages of stage 2 and stage 3. That's that for pros. The rest of the VRS points in these tier 2 lands only get you into stage 1/my major qualifier. So you can go to them all day long, you can farm them all day long, but it'll never ever get you like super, super high up. So if you're Aurora, by the way, I've even fixed your problem. You wouldn't have bothered going to this tournament. Wouldn't have helped you, you're already in the major. So all it would do for me is it would get you into a LAN, and at the LAN we all decided, so it would fix both problems. You'd have this LAN circuit, but at the end it's still one big LAN gets you into the actual tournament itself. So it's a complicated topic, but anything else on that before we go, boys?
Yeah, this is tangentially related, but you did touch on it briefly, and I think people might find it interesting. But obviously, a lot of what I do for work is about like odds creation for things like tournament outrights, right? So I'm into a lot of like probabilistic modeling of like if it's a certain kind of stage or if it's a certain kind of like match, like a best of 3, best of 1, how do you have to like shift the probabilities for like the favorite and stuff? And it is actually statistically provable that if it's like a best of 1 instead of a best of 3, for example, there is just more randomness. That's not something that like people are making up.
Yeah, of course.
And similarly, if you schedule a bunch of matches on the same day, like you mentioned, again, it's always the favorite whose odds you have to shift down, because the favorite is the one that's least likely to do as well as they're supposed to, right? And so, yeah, I think, I don't know.
By the way, hence why you notice that both Aramars and the Major, my biggest pet peeve is still that we play the BO1s on the same day. I think that it's no surprise. Put it this way, guys, Vitality lost one of those BO1s at the last fucking major. You've got 2 FaZe Clan when they were shit. Like, that's real. Like, that one thing of the 2 BO1s the first day has produced the craziest results in the history of CS.
I don't know how you fix it, is what I was going to say. But, like, yeah, the fact that we've got both in each tournament stage is horrible. Yeah.
Okay, we have one last point. But before we get there, there's another poly market. So, also, we have some upcoming games. So let's go to here. And here's a game that's interesting. FaZe is going to PGL in theory. In theory. I don't know how that's going to work. Maybe they aren't. But let's imagine they are for now. If they go there, they will play Eyeballers, who just qualified to this PGL and just got this spot out of nowhere. If people don't remember, the year began with Eyeballers beating FaZe in the online part of Blast Bounty. A lot of people won't know that detail. Well, your boy JW, guys, you can't keep losing to people who've actively been washed themselves. They would probably admit themselves for about 5 years. Like, even they don't believe they're good play. Even they're like, shit, how did I win that game? Lol, you're as shit as me. Aha, you're as bad as me. Like, mate, the problem is, look at the poly market. I can't even say I disagree. Look, even the poly market traders think FaZe will win this game. They believe they have a 56% chance. But it's only a 56% chance against a team that effectively only plays online in these shit lands. So, Lars, are these the right numbers? Would you take FaZe? Would you take Eyeballers? Where are we going here?
Yeah, I mean, I know you said there's a phase point coming. I don't know if you mean this or
it's after this.
Actual phase point next. After this, okay.
This is what
I'll keep it brief
segue.
then, but something that I wanted to mention earlier, like, because you said that FaZe obviously still have 2 star players or whatever, like 2 quality players, is definitely true. But the problem with FaZe right now is that the 2 players that you sort of need to be the best, like if you think about a team, which 2 players are the most important, obviously non-IGL, it's the aggressive rifler and it's the AWPer. And like, so it's all good that FaZe have like a closer player and like a flex player, but like the sort of engine of the team is missing. If you know, like, it doesn't matter how good the rest of the car is if it can't go, you know. So yeah, I've also seen some good things from Eyeballers actually. Like, I don't know if you guys remember when they played Vitality. I can't remember which tournament it was now. It was like was it Blast Bounty? I think
probably
like,
Bounty.
not
Yeah,
most recent.
yeah.
But Bob XD in particular, it was actually really impressive to me as a player. He's one of those guys where I was looking at him and thinking he could definitely be on like a heroic or make the step up. So yeah, I'm not sure if I would have FaZe this high actually. I might even have this a bit lower. Like, I don't know. I think FaZe can lose to anyone right now, and this might as well be a coin flip.
I'll just kind of put a spoiler on this one. If you read the fine print on poly, this is going to ruin the whole market. But if people actually listen to this one, then here, maybe you can get some free predictions in. Is that and get some free W's here? Is that if a game is canceled on poly market or ends in a tie or anything like that, it pays out 50-50. So you should just go into eyeballers right now.
Right.
You should just 100% go into eyeballers right now with as much as you feel like is safe. And that if you think, for example, that FaZe is actually not going to show up to this tournament, you should put absolutely everything you can on eyeballers and then until the market evens it out, because you'll just get 50-50 back. So that's if they don't go to the tournament. So I think they're not capable of going to this tournament. So so read the fine print, and there's think that you could take advantage of if you are really keeping your eye on these things.
Also, if you end up taking eyeballers, I also do think those are pretty good numbers for the potential upsets. I'll tell you what, if you were to ask me to draft up, there's, what FaZe after all those losses, who are they going to play now? And you just go a bunch of people who have zero pressure on them, even have a real vet player like JW, and then have some up-and-coming players who are like decent. Like, that's exactly what the doctor ordered to get a fucking massive upset and to lose again. And also, when they play that match, by the way, it's going to be every match from here on out until they fail the major, the pressure on FaZe is going to be fucking bonkers. Like, it's actually going to be like they were at the major getting eliminated. That kind of pressure is on them now, even though the games themselves isn't like that for the opponent. The opponent doesn't have the same thing to win. So I think it's crazy, personally. Okay, we'll go to the last point of the show then. As I said, I promised it earlier, it is a FaZe point. Since it's ugly, what I've billed it as is this. It's actually not that FaZe sucks. Or you can obviously talk about anything about FaZe you want. I'm going to specifically do it from the angle of 3 of the players. I think for 3 of the players, it's not even bad, it's just ugly. And here's why. Because all 3 of these players I like. In fact, I think the whole community likes these 3 players. Those 3 players are, of course, Frozen, Twistzz, and karrigan. I think everyone likes them. I think they're even 3 of the players, maybe a little bit less on Twistzz if people just don't like, the angles of think he's a diva or whatever. I like him, he's all right. I think people pull for these players. I think people even, by the way, a lot of the community are probably with me on this. One of the weirdest things about this team is, unlike Liquid, I think a lot of fans would airlift these 3 players and put them in better teams and would actually put them in teams that could win. In Liquid, I think people have looked at those players and went, fuck you, you shit at the game, blah, blah. And Chewie, they won't give him another chance. Lurks would never have gotten him with a better team if it wasn't for G2 picking him up. Elise probably would be stuck there. The joke I made was, his next stop will be Passion UA, won't it? Except it might not be if Senzu stays there. So you never know. Like, at this point, I think people still want those 3 players to succeed. I think collectively, we all even believe they can be good at their roles in the right team. And I also do think all 3 players are taking a massive psychological/mental toll from what is going on right now, because they, in theory, could be good players. And then even then, they're even having to do that thing where, because it hasn't ended yet, you can't, by the way, I'll never do this. I would never DM karrigan now and go, it's not your fault, bro. It's that fucking Jacob and Brokey, because, bro, he has to actually work with that guy. That's fucked up. You don't ever, that would be like saying to someone something about their family member that's, hey, your wife's a bit of a bitch, isn't it? She probably divorced her. Like, wait till he divorces you, idiot. You don't just come in and say that. Like, that you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So I also feel really bad for these players. Like, I also feel like they're in such a bad spot. That's why it's ugly. Because on the one hand, essentially, to help FaZe and maybe even these players, I have to go super hard on them. I actually feel like it's my responsibility. I think actually to go, I like you, so kid gloves, I think that wouldn't help them in the long run. I think that would be like enabling an addict that's a friend of yours. I think you got to tell them, mate, this is the intervention, you got to get help. But in this case, don't just say, like, kick that girl you with it. He got to figure that part out himself. You just got to tell him you got a problem. We've got to come to Jesus on this. So that's why I picked it as ugly. You guys do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I think it definitely is ugly. I think it's been ugly for a while, though, which makes it kind of even more ugly, right? The fact that it seems like, even though we've had this exact scenario for the past however many, years, even at this point, nothing's changing. And the worst part about it for me is that there literally is, like, an alternative possible world where instead of Brokey and Jacob, there's, like, Elige and Simple on this team. Or, like, maybe you swap, like, Twistzz for Rain or something, if obviously those 2 didn't have to be swapped. And I don't know. I don't care at that point how toxic the team environment is, like, at least they have a team that they're working with. And instead, it feels like there's no option for FaZe. Like, there aren't any pivots because the org very clearly isn't willing to, for whatever reason, to buy players or to do anything that isn't like trying a tier 3 player, if you know what I mean, because that's effectively what Jacob was. And so they're in the Liquid situation where it's like, okay, we can either make a swap or we can just sit on this and just watch everything go downhill and pray that things get better miraculously somehow. And as we mentioned earlier, for players like karrigan, that's just not what they want in this part of their career. Like, they're too good for that. They just deserve better than that. And at the same time, like, players like Frozen, I know this was rumored like a couple of times, but like I can kind of semi-verify that this was true. He was sniffing around Na'Vi and Na'Vi was sniffing around him. Like that was real. That was in the rumor mill. And you definitely reevaluate that offer now, don't you? Imagine Frozen goes to Na'Vi for Imma or something. Like they could be a contender. That's legitimately a massive upgrade. And in FaZe, it's like what do you even do at this point to upgrade them? How do you get them back into contention? Because I agree with you that the 3 players you mentioned are the good pieces of this team. Like, karrigan can still be an elite caller if he's got the right pieces. Frozen is still very clearly like a top 10 rifler in the world. And Twistzz is still good at what he does, which is being like a flex glue player that can sort of pull pieces together. But again, as I mentioned, if you don't have like that star space taker type, if you don't have like a flameZ, if you don't have a Molbs, if you don't have you're just not going to get very far in the way CS2 works right now. And when you combine that with the fact that Brokey is probably like a bottom 5 AWPer in the top 20 teams, like
but people don't know his stats quite literally are as bad as the worst low fraggy IGLs in the game.
Yes, and obviously I'm not just talking about KPR either. Like when I do my own stats, like Brokey, for example, of all the AWPers in Tier 1, he has the highest trade opportunities on both T and CT side. He's like if you want to put it, not so nicely, he's the biggest beta of any AWPer. And yet he's putting up the numbers that he's putting up. Like FaZe's system could be so good for a different AWPer, but they just won't try another AWPer. And it's just painful. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay, if you want to see more, you haven't given your thoughts, Mike. I forgot that. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. One thing I want to just get into with FaZe here is just that I feel like actually it's worth bringing up that a lot of this falls on karrigan, because when he's trying to make it seem like he's not pulling the strings or having any effect on the roster moves. I mean, I feel like karrigan's responses about Neo's bench was kind of like, oh, it's a surprise. And he kind of had the same approach for when Jacob was brought onto the roster, that it's like, this is just management doing it. It's like, no, your wife was the sports psychologist of Apogee. Why are you saying this? And then when they, a lot too many of the moves lately have just kind of been karrigan acting like he's completely innocent on these things. And it's kind of leaving a bad taste in my mouth regarding how the twilight years of his career are playing out, because he's almost going with that sort of NiKo approach from a handful of years ago, where it's just that if you never actually take any responsibility, if you never take any responsibility for any of these things, then nobody can really blame you. But I do blame you. Even if he says, he can say it all he wants in public interviews that he's not the reason Jacob's on this team, and that his wife speaking to him about Jacob wasn't a factoring decision in the roster. Like, dude, is Eddie from FaZe scouting players in Tier 2? Is Eddie from FaZe doing that? I like Eddie. He's not watching Tier 2 Apogee game. Like, it's not, there's no world that's happening, okay? To me, like, Eddie is kind of like the Joker Steve of Liquid, he's a chill dude. I like talking to him.
Get him, guys, get him.
Yeah, like I like hanging out with these guys, whatever.
So bad, bro.
Right, but I don't think that either of them are making moves. Like, they're pinning themselves to who they consider to be their highest value player. They're listening to their highest value player on what they want. Yeah. For Joker Steve, it was Twistzz when he was on Liquid. For Eddie, I would assume it's karrigan on FaZe now. And then they're just pulling the trigger on moves that, because they don't have any sort of person that's supposed to be a true GM that's number crunching and going through demos and trying to build an eye test for this stuff. So I just think that the whole the way karrigan's going out with these sort of moves is sort of, it's just not. It's sort of like, if I'm gonna blame zonic for how he's kind of ran Falcons through into the ground, I gotta blame karrigan now. So yeah, as beloved as he is for me, I just right now think that this is more or less the fate that he created for this team.
Anyway, if you want to see more stats wankery, just go to @LuzRaposa on x.com.